hello, hi. Hi everyone, hi, hello, welcome to the stream. How are you all doing? Late OP, of course, there cannot be a stream without late OP. Although, again, I am 45 seconds late. I don't. I don't think we can hold each other to such high standards. Shubhra on time. Thank you, Shubhra. You're my only supporter. Uh, yeah, so many late OPs, guys. What is this? Uh, oh wow. So QWERTY King is from Melbourne. 2 a.m. OP.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Nice.
yeah. So we are streaming to international audience. Guys, I hope I'm audible. True content OP. We are going to learn. Yes, Rohan, we are. Arjun, Mukesh, I'm excited for this one as well. I am super excited. Gaurav on time. Yes, on time. Thank you guys. Abhi dekho, sab log early OP, on time OP.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Kunal, loving your neuroscience videos. Thank you, Kunal. Thank you so much. Will there be a discussion on the neuroscience part of it? Star Sunny. Today I'm a student. I'm just going to go with the flow. I'm going to learn. I'm going to see what I make of it, and then let's figure it out. I'm here to make notes. So see now, I haven't connected my iPad. I'm just going to write, and I'm just going to make notes today because I
You're
want
Abish
to.
today.
Yes.
We are expecting high level notes from you.
Yes, I am a beast today. So Pintu has said hello world, and I think she's put it in that
Yeah.
yeah, the coding
Angular.
language. Yeah. So hi, welcome to my awesome guest Srinath, Jenil. Thank you both for joining me. How are you
Hello,
guys
Thank you.
doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's my pleasure because you are here to teach me something that is I've been looking forward to it for so long. And in our conversations with both of you separately, we've spoken about how this needs to be done.
Yeah.
We need to
Yes,
do something on coding. And what's interesting is that this Friday I'm talking about language from a philosophical sense. And what better way to talk of language than to start off with coding?
perfect.
I am super
Definitely.
excited. Okay, can you both, Srinath, can you just introduce yourself and tell everybody why are you talking about coding? What is your relationship with coding?
Perfect. So I come from an engineering background. I have done 4 years of computer engineering, and for the last 7, 8 years, I have been working as a software developer.
Awesome.
And I've recently become a product owner in my company where I lead teams to work on software development coding. So I've been involved with the coding language and the entire art of coding itself for quite a long time, and not just as a part of work, but yeah, the art of coding.
I'm yeah, that's my first heading, the
Yeah.
art of coding. I love it. If I'm going to change the
The
title of
title.
the stream to the art of coding. I love
Yeah.
it. Can we have art of coding OP?
Trust me,
uh,
there are so many similarities between the human body.
sure.
We'll get to it. Yeah, that's going to be
Yeah, like that doesn't surprise me
all
at all. If it's a language, then it's an art,
absolutely,
right?
definitely, yeah.
Okay, awesome.
And we are creating something with it, so it is truly art. Yeah.
Correct. So it's one of the. I mean, it fits in with all the definition of art.
Yeah.
Awesome. Can you just say which language are you using the most in your work?
Right. So I work with different kinds of languages, obviously, but basically JavaScript or TypeScript, and we have different kind of backend languages or
Of
front end
course.
languages.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I'm super
JavaScript, Java,
familiar with all of
all
that.
of them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. JavaScript. Yeah, sure.
So I
All
think the
right.
most famous ones are Java, JavaScript, C. So we have used all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mar Java is, I think,
Yes, that's
famously.
from
Yeah,
there. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right.
yeah.
Uh,
That's the etymology. Yeah.
Jenil, can you give us similar just a backstory with
Yeah,
you and coding?
so
Yeah.
yeah, so I used to work as a full stack developer, and
Okay.
then I used to work as a blockchain engineer at a company called Zero Chain. So I
Is that
graduated in 2019.
cryptocurrency?
Yeah,
Okay.
cryptocurrency.
Wow.
So I graduated in 2019, and for the past 3, 4 years, I've been doing research on blockchain and crypto with a few other people and my professor who are doing their PhD on crypto economics and
Okay.
blockchain and crypto. So I've been working with them very closely. So yeah, that's my background. I've been working as a software developer for about 2 years, and recently I just quit my job. I'm in India. I'm working on a few projects which we can talk about sometime in the
Yeah.
future.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my background with coding, and like he said, it's 100% art. It's creativity at its best. And there was this great article written by Paul Graham called "Hackers and Painters,"
Mm-hmm.
and he basically related hackers to painters, where uh, they sort of linked the like if you look at the neuroscience of it, it's literally you're creating when you write coding. You're
Right.
problem solving and you're coming up with solutions that don't exist yet, and that is truly art. There are no
Right.
constraints. You are pretty much interfacing with a computer, and you have the power to create that can be used by millions of people. So
Yeah.
in a sense, it is truly art. It depends on the way you define it. I don't think we can go much into the consciousness and AI and all those
We
parts of it,
can,
but
but probably it'll take a whole other stream because
yeah, yeah,
my mind is already going there.
Yeah.
Also, it's interesting because it's almost like it's one of the purest forms of art because we have created the whole thing.
yeah,
So it's like the language itself is an art form,
hmm
and then using that art form, we can then build on top of it and create literally anything
exactly,
else.
So much more, yeah.
That's
exactly.
an amazing way to look at it, actually.
Yeah, it is art.
Also,
I mean, people who are artists and painters and singers and do like some form of art activity on their side and are also programmers tend to be some of the best programmers, at least what I've seen.
oh, thank you
Oh,
so much.
Yeah. So Srinath wants to be very clear that he's an artist because I can see 1, 2, 3, 4 musical instruments behind
That's
him.
just my fixed setup anyway. That was there for my last video as well. Yeah.
Yes. And Jenil has clearly won a lot of
Yeah.
cricket. Is that cricket?
Yeah, I used
Wow.
to play a lot of sports. I played more sports than I studied in school. So
Okay.
I
Amazing.
used to play table tennis and
Oh,
cricket.
wow.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning. So on this channel, we are huge supporters of people who do more than two things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. So I think that that's one of the best ways to learn, like just find patterns between completely different systems and then try and correlate them.
That's the
So
only way you can recall them as a different, in a different video. And
yeah.
you can call them to explain something else. Yeah.
Awesome. So people are asking if anybody is here from TCS. So I'm afraid not. I have to disappoint them. No, nobody's from TCS.
No.
Okay. And all right. Any unemployed here? Any medical students? Okay. So I'm a medical student, Sneha. So if that counts. And so many people are showing off their coding skills. I don't understand what they're saying. It's just a lot of code. Maybe at the end of the
Yeah.
discussion, I can uncode, I can decode the chat. Okay. Tell me where to start from. I have zero clue of coding. How would you teach me? Srinath?
Okay. So let's get into a little bit of like an introduction, right? Let's break it down before we jump into what programming language and what what is the whole. All of those are just layers on top. So
Sure.
before all of that, like if you rewind back, say 50 years or 100 years,
Okay.
so when this whole software, before the whole software or before even the computing revolution hit in, so probably the first crazy thing that came in was when the concept of a chip was introduced.
Okay.
Right? So you call it as a microcontroller or you call it as a chip.
Mhm.
So the idea was, so at that point in time, the basic idea, like you have in multiple of your streams, you have discussed about how you delegate certain things to certain parts of your brain. So remember, like in many discussions, you
Sure.
have
Yeah, you
explained how to
correct. You
delegate,
outsource.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, like
Yeah.
outsource, exactly. So probably with that same intent is why people came up with the concept of outsourcing the calculation. So maybe the most basic idea would have been that you get a chip to do the calculation for you, simple calculation, maybe just
Sure.
maths, just simple maths,
Yeah. Like addition,
So-
subtraction.
addition, subtraction.
Okay.
Right? So that would be one of the first basic ones, where there is a chip that does addition, subtraction for you, where you can probably put in an input
Mhm.
and you get an output. So
Okay.
at the very basic sense of it, the first computing or any computing device always comes down to input and output. You pass in an input, it does something inside that whole black box.
Right.
And then when it comes out, there's an output.
Right.
So now at the very basic part of the chip, probably the initial one was just an input and it does some calculation and does the output, right?
Okay.
That's the very basic. The chip does just that.
Okay.
At that point in time, there was no concept of software as such. The word which we refer to software was never there. It was just the chip. There was no division of hardware and software at that point in time.
Sorry, no, 1 second. So when you talk of the chip, that chip is what? I mean, there has to be some software. Otherwise, it's just a
Right.
piece of metal, right?
No, correct. So when I say chip, I'm talking about so if I want to break it down, let's look at so electrical pulses. Okay, so
Okay.
basically what we're trying to do is a chip will basically be able to generate electrical pulses and detect the value. So it generates from A and then gets it at B.
Okay.
Right? So imagine a way in which I have say a very simple way where I click on it once, it generates one pulse, and the
Right.
receiver gets that one pulse. If I
Correct.
click on it twice, it gets it twice.
Right.
So now this would mean that the chip is able to get the pulse, save it somewhere, and then maybe process it. So this is at the very basic way, right? This is where it starts off. Like you want to, like somebody's mentioned about the Alan Turing machine, the Turing machine, and people have, that was probably one of the first initial ones where they try to, like, this is outsourcing, where for us humanly it's so much easier for us to just calculate things or just add things on our hand.
Right.
But we wanted to outsource that for a machine to do the most basic of that.
Right. Because even in like neural evolution, the first neural connections that came is called as the spinal reflex. Okay. Jaise, suppose you touch something hot.
Correct.
Your hand goes back. That is a fundamental reflex.
Correct.
You don't need a limbic system. You don't need a brainstem also. You definitely don't need a PFC for that.
Absolutely.
It is just input, output.
Yeah.
That's it. And that is called a spinal level. So when you say, spinal level pe kaam kar raha hai, that means input, output, khatam. Kuch sochna nahi, kuch nahi. So it sounds like you are describing something like that.
Absolutely. Very basic. There is no major algorithm. We have not reached the concept of a logic, or there is no major calculations going on. It's just basic input and output. So there is an input, you know what to do, how to handle that input, you pass it out and out.
Right.
This is a very basic concept. So this would be like the very basic, okay, that there's an input and output.
Yeah.
The only thing which separates that from now, what we have now, are two things inside it. So between input and output, you would have storage and processing. Okay, and it is very freaky how over your last 2 months, whatever videos that you have done, it is so similar to the brain. Like,
yeah, exactly.
It is so similar because if you just take these four things, so you have input and the fourth one is the output.
And in the middle, if you add storage and processing, you have the brain.
Exactly.
Okay. Wow.
So it's actually freaky how if you just revert back and look at it, then you just have to look at, like, in input, you start off with, so any kind of input can come in. So that can be different types of inputs. Right?
Yeah, got it.
So now when you look at storage, the question is how to store and what will you store and where will you store it? All of those questions come in this way.
Fine.
Processing would be where the algorithm part comes in. So processing is more like a logic. Right? So that is where the logical concepts that we put in the processing is what is popularly known as algorithm.
Right.
So imagine if, say, I pass in input values of, say, 1 and 2 or 100 and 200.
Okay.
Now this 100 and 200 can be stored somewhere. These values 100 and 200.
Yeah.
You can process 100 and 200, maybe add them, subtract them. You can do multiple calculations on them and you output the value on it.
Right. So that calculation is the algorithm.
Calculation will be the algorithm. Yes. Processing is the algorithm.
Got it. Okay. Cool. This is quite, let me see if chat is with me so far. Sai Bhargava has said that just watch a video why programming is important on YouTube. On why coding is awesome. Okay, I will check this out. Awesome. And Miss Nonchalant said that creativity has no limit. Everybody gets to be creative. That's true, Miss Nonchalant. That's true. Everybody. So you do find creativity everywhere. Siblings OP. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. I swear they sound almost identical. Oh God. Okay, wait. I will change my audio.
Add like an audio.
Yeah, exactly. I'll add a filter. Srinath looks more champu than Sid.
Oh man.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Cool. We will get back to chat in a while. All right. So continue. Jenil, what do you think about it so far?
No, this is a great way to look at it. I
Yeah.
mean, I never thought of it that way. I was going to talk about inputs and outputs, but this is a great way to, look at it.
Yeah.
Even if you date it back, or even if you look at maths, right? We all have a good or a bad memory with mathematics.
Yeah.
And what math really is a lot of these formulas, or let's say addition or subtraction. There's a set of inputs and there's a set of outputs, and your brain does the calculation, or maybe you have to write it down on paper and you do the calculation, which is
Right.
sort of the pseudocode or the algorithm.
Right.
So I think it's a great way to look at it.
Yeah. I was thinking of how before the chips came about, they would have different ways of calculation, right? Like so abacus and
Yeah.
things like that.
Just pen and paper, right? We
Pen
do
and
many
paper.
crazy calculations with pen and paper.
Right.
Yeah.
And the only reason that we are using that is we are outsourcing
Yeah.
some
exactly.
parts of this calculation.
Correct.
Either we are outsourcing the memory part or we are outsourcing the algorithm part.
Correct.
Right? So, yeah. I mean, abacus is a kind of algorithm outsourcing because the way you calculate
Right.
it is different.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was actually gonna share like an interesting story on that. So if you date it way back, right? If you've heard of like there's this dish called shawarma
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
of
Yeah.
meat. It's
Yeah.
this rotating meat.
The
I
Avengers
don't.
film.
Yeah. So it's this rotating meat
Yeah. And they have to
that
cut it.
cooks.
Yeah.
They have to cut it, and then you can eat it once it's cooked.
Yeah.
So back in the day when, like, if we go to caveman days, right, where people used to cook food, they used to have sort of this shawarma like system where on a stick they used to have the meat, and it used to cook under raw fire, like bonfire, and it used to rotate
Yeah.
so that it cooks from every side. So the most, like, one of the first calculations, or like a computing system that was made, was to calculate the time when the meat was cooked by human beings.
Right.
So they could calculate when the meat is cooked perfectly so that they can eat it. And this is when they created this thing called the clock. And
Oh.
that's where the idea of time came along, where
Wow.
you could calculate the perfect time when the meat and the food is cooked so that you can eat it and it tastes good and you can digest it. So this was
Amazing.
one of the, like, it's when push comes to shove, and when when you're desperate.
When you need to, you will come
Yeah,
up with
yeah.
stuff. All right.
Wow.
Back to
Food is one of the best needs now.
yeah, absolutely. Even your calendar system has been based on that, right? Like, so which crops to put where,
Right.
because the seasons depend. So everything is coming
Right.
down to your basic needs. Okay, back to coding.
Okay.
You've reached the chip.
Yes.
Go on.
So we discussed 4 things on chip. So we have input, not necessarily chip, any computing device, okay,
Right.
any device, in fact, even humans. So input, storage, processing, and output.
Yeah.
So now if we have to go into all 4 of them a little bit more. So input can be, so we mentioned about, we have to look at the how, what, why about all 4 of them. So input could be that, okay, any kind of information can come into a system. And the question is, where do we save them? So like before we go into the storage, the input itself, how does the value come inside?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and how does the value come inside is one, and what kind of values can come inside a system?
Right.
So how the value come inside is the part of the hardware and software journey.
Right. Is
Okay,
that the
so-
1 and 0 bit?
Yes, we'll come to that. Storage is
sorry.
where the 1 and 0 will come.
Sorry.
into.
Yeah. Got
That's
it.
a very good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for example, the input would be, for example, there are different kind of ways in which you can pass. Imagine everything as a black box. The black box is actually a common way we refer to it in computing as well. So
Okay.
black box is where you don't know how the storage and processing happens, but you just know that there is some input going and this is the output you want. The black box is a common thing that's called. All right. So imagine that input is coming in. So now what kind of input can come into a system? So it can be a number. Right? It can be a decimal point. So it can be 100.5, it can be 100.75, it can be a complete number. It
Right.
can be, it can be a long number, small number. It can be a word. A
Mhm.
word is commonly known as a string in computing.
Okay.
String is the word for it. And so it can be a large text. It can be a small, it can be a name, it can be an address, it can be anything.
Sure.
It can be any kind of this.
Yeah.
But it can get even more complex. It can be an entire image. right? An image can go into a system. It can be
Yeah.
a video, right?
Yeah.
Right, because it's a system and we are not looking at what is an input, not necessarily a number. It can be anything that goes into the system.
Correct.
But then the point is, independent of what goes into the different types, what I mentioned now is like a type.
Yeah.
The input type could be a number or an image or a video.
Correct.
How can the black box treat all of them similarly? Right? So this is the concept of a variable. So the basic concept of a coding, any coding language, if you take, there are millions of coding language, but that's not the point there.
There are what?
There would be, I'm sure there would be that many, probably
Okay.
not millions, but there are enough coding languages.
Here I was thinking कि चलो coding सीखते हैं.
No, but the language, that's the beauty of it. The coding language is not as important as the construct or the concept of the coding language itself, or the concept of a programming language.
Okay.
For example, not just programming language, even normal English, Hindi, if you take languages, the idea is to communicate.
Right.
Right? Very similarly, if I have to communicate to you using a language which is English, the programmer needs to communicate to the chip using the programming language.
Understood.
Which means the programmer is telling the chip how to run using the programming language, which is nothing but syntax.
Okay.
Right? Syntax is actually a word in coding where you say that this is the syntax. So this is how you write the language or how you say the language in such a way that the chip or the machine or the hardware knows how to
So
act.
in verbal language, syntax is sort of like the rules that govern whether the noun comes first before the verb, or
Exactly.
sort
Or
of like where is the
grammar.
pronoun, grammar. Yeah.
Grammar. Somebody has written syntax is equal to, okay,
Exactly.
he's written syntax equals grammar.
Equals grammar. Yeah. So somebody's mentioned Charles Babbage. He
Right,
made
he's
the
the one-
first. Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is what we were taught, right, in school. Like he made the first
Exactly.
computer.
That huge computer which fit into the entire-
Right. Okay. Yeah, we should remember him when
Yes,
we are
of
starting.
course, yeah, I know. Pay our
Fair.
respect.
Pay our respects to him. Okay, cool. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So so now we are at the input part of it.
Yeah.
Right. So input means that we have to decide what kind of input. So these are all valid inputs, right? Just numbers or in videos or images.
Yeah.
So now the question that you got in, that technically the chip doesn't really differentiate between image or video or number.
Right.
For the chip, everything is binary. Right? And by binary, I mean that they are literally ones and zeros.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you would have seen Matrix and you've seen Neo, and where he
sees
becomes the one,
everything in
he sees everything in the green one, and that's ones and zeros.
Oh, which is also ironic. He becomes the one.
Not
as opposed to zero.
Yeah.
Because he was the zero before. Okay. Yeah, continue. I never thought of that. All right.
So that's the beauty. So when we look at the input to the system, the computing system, they are all actually ones and zeros. So actually the numbers 1 to 10, if you take at it, that is just a decimal system that we use.
Right.
Probably because we have 10 fingers, but decimal system is what we are used to.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's true.
Right. So after 9, it goes back to 10, and there's no number between 9 and 10, right? The 10 and the 10 to 19 and 20 to 29. That's how the decimal system
There's
works.
no reason that it should have been like that. It could have been
Right.
every 11th number.
Right. If we have 11 fingers, we would have done 11 based.
Oh God.
Probably that's just.
Yeah. Everything is related to something else.
Right.
Like everything is built on something. Okay.
Built on something. Yeah. That's the decimal system that we are using.
Correct.
But for the computing world, probably like what we discussed about the chip, about a signal going or not going.
Yeah.
So if the signal goes, it's a 1. If it doesn't, it's a 0. So that's the concept of a binary. You just need 2 values to get a binary, 1 and 0.
Dude, this is so crazy because, I mean, in a very simple sense, this is also what happens in the brain. Because
electrical pulses. Okay.
yeah, like so, basically every neuron firing is a receptor. Okay. Like I don't want to go too deep into it, but then screw it, I will go too deep into it. Receptors hota hai, and receptor ka open and closed state hota hai. So if the receptor, so so when an impulse is transmitted, something called as the all or none. So if it crosses a certain threshold, that neuron will fire. If it doesn't, then it will not fire. and if it fires, then it will reach that ultimate destination.
There's no middle one, right? There's no 0.5. It's only 1 or 0.
No, there is a modulation as to at what level should the neuron fire.
Correct.
वो
It'll
change
always
हो
be 1
सकता.
or 0.
Correct.
Correct. Yeah.
It'll either fire or not fire.
Or not.
At what level it will fire can keep getting changed depending on the needs.
Correct.
Oh man. Okay. All right. Cool. Okay.
Super. So this is the very, very basic. So for example, the binary concept is, so even now when we look at systems, the core basic of it is just that the chip doesn't recognize whether it's an image or a video or a number or a word.
Right.
It's all binary to the chip.
Okay. So
Right?
even today, that's
Even
not
today,
changed.
The core concept of the binary is still the same. It's just that now there are more complicated concepts of how to package ones and zeros together. So there have been a lot of discussions to add a 1 0 and a -1.
Right.
Even adding one more number on the other side.
Will, yeah,
like
exponentially, yeah.
So which means our 1 GB ka file could suddenly become 1 MB or 10 MB because the amount of data required to show that 1 GB completely goes down.
Right.
So
But
there are
they've
a lot
not been able to do this.
As far as I know, it's only been 2. It's all binary. Internally, everything is binary.
Wow. So, okay, on a random note, so quantum computers do this, right? In quantum computers, it's not a binary, so it adds a, if I'm not mistaken. Jenil?
Yeah. You're right. I was gonna bring it up that
Yeah.
Awesome.
in quantum computing, it's a little different.
Yeah.
But my knowledge on quantum computing is limited, so I can't go much deep into it. But I know, it's much more than binary. It
Yeah.
goes a little deeper into it, and it's still a very new subject, and I think some companies are doing research on it.
Correct. Didn't Google do that? Like Google had published a paper saying that they have a quantum computer that could what was that? Like the holy grail of quantum computing. Like they could solve a problem that the best supercomputer today couldn't solve it in its lifetime or something like that. I can't remember. But
I mean, I know of DeepMind.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that they
DeepMind
were-
was their
yeah,
the
DeepMind,
company
yeah,
that-
but then they had done some breakthrough in quantum computing specifically. I can't remember the details, but
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, IBM has a quantum computer, as far as I know,
Okay.
and even if you go to their headquarters, you can go see it.
okay.
But
Qubits.
yeah, it's still,
Yeah, the difference between bits and qubits. So I think
Qubits.
quantum
Yeah,
computers
exactly.
use
Yeah.
qubits. Yeah, exactly. Chat is superb.
Yeah.
We have, I mean, not to blow my like own YouTube channel, but what a chat, yeah.
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 I mean, I'm just saying.
There are so many good suggestions, man. They have been asking you to see the similarity between basic neural network and the human brain. Oh, that is an amazing conversation.
Yeah, basic neural. So would that be in machine learning? Neural networks in computer science is machine learning, right?
So I have a feeling that initially when computing and the whole software hardware thing started, I think the goal was always to go towards the human brain.
Yeah.
Because it makes sense naturally that
Correct.
it's kind of silly that we are building something which is not as good as ourselves and we are
Sure.
working towards making it as good as us.
Correct. It's also interesting that the best thing that our brain can create is itself. And it's almost like we are unable to think of another way of doing it because this is it.
Yeah,
This
literally over the span of 100, 200 years, we are working towards building ourselves.
ourselves, which is art, which is the essence of art, because every artist creates himself or herself in their art.
There is no real creating something new. It's always mixing things and creating.
Correct. And the way you create it will reflect yourself. और कोई possibility नहीं है. You cannot reflect someone else.
Correct.
Oh my God,
The
this
more
is so
you
meta.
change, the more you adapt, the more you create.
Yeah, and probably like the only person who can actually create something completely new is AI.
Right.
Because a human being can never create anything else other than what a human brain is. Probably.
So yeah, so if you talk about AI, there's this thing called a knowledge base.
Okay.
Right? You have a set of constraints and you have a specified knowledge base that you provide to an AI or a machine learning model.
Yeah.
And that knowledge base is where it determines and calculates and processes and gives you a specific output or a probability.
Yeah.
Right? the knowledge base of an artificial intelligence is
It's based
probably
on.
is the
Okay.
knowledge base of combined of all these people that
Yeah.
created it, and it's constantly learning.
Correct.
It's getting better by the second.
Hmm.
Right.
So its knowledge base is exponentially more complex than a human being.
Yeah.
So once we get to that AI stage, once we are able to simulate a working brain, then we can go hands off and see like
Yeah.
where it takes off.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the scary part.
So, Janil, we had spoken about this GPT-3,
Yeah,
and a
yeah.
lot of people in the chat are talking about it.
Oh.
And yeah, guys, you know what? I think we need to sort of come back
Yeah.
because this is a
Yeah, I know.
this is a very slippery topic because everything is interesting.
Of
Every
course.
line can take you in another
But at
towards
least
another
we
topic.
know these are interesting topics to come back to for sure.
For sure,
For
yeah.
sure.
Like I'll just write down. So we'll like AI, machine learning, and GPT-3, and even Neuralink. Like at the end of it, because Neuralink is where all of this meets up. I
Of
think.
course, yeah. I
Like,
think we should really like study Neuralink properly from all
and
angles.
do a
once we
yeah,
get comfortable.
yeah, yeah,
Proper
yeah.
research.
Cool. Okay, back to
Let's go back.
introduction. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So
Where
I
were
think
we?
we were again with our input and storage processing output. So we touched upon the input where everything is
Yeah.
ones and zeros, and
Yes.
any kind of input is a valid input. Everything
Yeah.
comes down to binary.
Correct.
Now the next thing would be storage. So
Hmm.
now you've gotten in an input of any kind. Now
Hmm.
the second thing is you have to store it.
Yeah.
So now, of course, we know that the only way to store it would again be in binary
Hmm.
until quantum computing comes
Sure.
along. But until that, we have binary ones and zeros.
Right.
So which means, of course, we have different ways to store it in binary internally. But now we add a layer in between, as that is the programming language. So the programming language can tell how to persist data. So we don't actually have to code in ones and zeros,
Mm-hmm.
right? So which means that we write syntax, we write grammar of that particular programming language, and that language takes care of the job of persisting that in the
So
storage.
when you say persist, does that have a separate meaning in computer science?
Probably a technical word, but
Yeah, what
persist
is it?
means that you take data and put it in the database. In the very database is the place you have the data,
Okay.
and you put the data in the database. Very simply put.
So it's like so if it's like a filter and नीचे सब कुछ ones and zero में ही जाता है,
Correct.
but there are different like what you put. So the filter is like the persisting, like the language.
Right. So which means that, so the idea is ones and zeros is completely away from the programmer. The developer
Yeah.
has no idea about it, right?
Yeah.
It's always, there is I think abstraction is a word. Everything is abstracted up.
Right.
Okay. So when you use it, you see a complete different world, but internally everything gets taken care of. Okay.
Yeah. That's,
That's
I
probably
mean, that's also neuroscience, but
yeah.
so 1 second. The best coder in the world, can they look at ones and zeros and read what it means?
No, we're not expected to. Also, because
Sure,
ones and zeros
but can
are-
they? No.
I don't think there's anybody who can, unless you can, maybe Shakuntala Devi can calculate that fast and make, but the point is that is not the programming skill as such, right? The
Right.
programming skill is how well can you construct the code to do XYZ task, not about how well you can convert a letter to a number and persist. That is not a very big deal, right? Because that's fixed. A will always be saved as a particular number in the system, in the chip, the letter A. Which always, that is something that a compiler does. So the word that the person who does this is, the machine which does this is known as a compiler.
Right.
The compiler breaks, if I write 10 lines of code, it'll break, the compiler breaks it down into binary and saves it or does it in the system.
Understood. Okay. Got it.
Cool. So now we are at storage. So that's the second part.
Yeah.
Now we come to the very interesting thing, which is the processing.
Right. The algorithms.
Right? The algorithm. So now we have persisted as per need. So in the storage we have, so if I get two values, 100 and 200, and our entire coding is supposed to just sum it, right? We're supposed to do 100 plus 200. So add it. Yeah. So now to do 100 plus 200, probably you don't need to save anything. So the storage might not be needed at all. Right? But you still need to do the processing where you take the two numbers and you add it. Right? So when you do the addition and the final value that comes in, that final value that comes out of the addition, you have to probably persist it somewhere and then put it in the output. So storage and processing are continuously talking to each other. You put it in the storage and then exactly, right? The brain. Yeah, I know. I can see you laughing at that.
Oh God. Okay.
Right? Which is very logical. Obviously, you have to have
Of course. How else can you do it?
Exactly. Because while processing, you will also want more and more data, so you fetch it from the storage.
Yeah, that's true.
right?
Yeah, because I mean,
And where it gets very freaky is the terminologies, because we call it memory, which is
yeah,
exactly the same.
it's the same. I mean,
Right.
so we're getting it backwards, right? Like we're calling it
Yeah,
memory because of the brain, and I
correct.
mean, it's not the other way around. But also, it's interesting because you make it sound like the immediate processing is not that doesn't need memory so much. So the more complex you solve, the more you need memory, and
Complex.
right. So you need to store things.
Right.
And I just realized that in biological evolution there are three levels of memory. Then there is the spinal reflex, which is
Right.
abhidiya abhiliya, like
Correct.
kuch you don't have to save anything.
No storage, no processing. Yeah.
And then you go up, you reach your hippocampus, and वहाँ पे long term storage होता है.
Correct.
And you go still forward, and PFC में you have a third layer of memory, which is again immediate.
Right, but does it get persisted somewhere? Anything persisted anywhere?
Persisted matlab, so
Matlab, is there like so I'm looking at like, is there a RAM and ROM kind of memory
yeah,
where small
exactly.
memory and long-term memory?
Yeah, so PFC has the RAM, so immediate
Correct.
udhar ka udhar hi karne ka, but that is different from spinal memory, because spinal memory is like seconds, no, milliseconds. So
Right.
spinal memory mein things get dealt with. You don't even realize what all your spinal memory is
Oh
doing.
my God, this is super freaky because there are three in this as well, and we are going to touch upon it. So what we mentioned about the input,
Yeah.
so I think Jack can also add here. So what we talk about very simply is variables.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we look at Jenny, maybe you can also discuss more about this. But when we
Yeah.
look at, obviously from a programming thing, if I get 100 and 200, I will obviously just save 100 in a variable called A and 200 in a variable called B. And it is A and B that I do A plus B on.
Right.
Right? Because I don't get the number 100 and do anything on it. I will get a variable which points to 100.
Mm-hmm.
That is
Okay.
instantaneous saving it. Just A, 100 is put inside A.
Okay.
It's sort of like, you need to assign a particular value into something.
Yeah.
What do you assign it to? You can call it whatever you want,
Yeah.
but if you assign a certain value, let's say 3 to A, then you can access it later if you want.
Yeah.
And a lot of times if you're writing a particular program and you
Yeah.
think that you might need to access this again or refer to it, you don't want to call 100 every single time. You can access that variable directly.
Correct.
And in the future, I mean, if we go much more deeper into this, we can also talk about mutability and how that variable could change. But that's for like
Also kind of like in humans, right? So we assigned a particular meaning to a particular sound.
Yeah.
There was no reason to do that, but any word could mean any meaning, but we assigned that first, and then we spent our time memorizing that sound, saying that apple,
Right.
like so on. Apple means this, but the word,
Right.
those syllables and those consonants have no inherent meaning, and we attach that.
You attach it. Yeah.
Okay, I think I'm getting the picture. All right. So we are at algorithms.
Right. So the third part, we are at processing already. And there is now algorithm. What I explained is just A plus B.
Right.
Of course, this is where it just starts, and you can go as high as you want, as interesting it can get, as complex as you want.
Right.
And that's where the algorithm gets the whole concept of good programmers. What makes a good programmer is how well you write the algorithm.
Okay.
How efficiently you write the algorithm in such a way that it is done as quick as possible to consume as little energy resources as possible. So those are ways to improve the algorithm.
Okay.
And
So
then you output it.
when you're coding, you need to think about, so when you're learning the language, you are learning how to input. Correct?
One. Yeah. Also.
And the more you learn, so the art of coding is how efficiently you can
Process it.
Yeah, process it.
Third step. Yeah.
The third step. And the middle step, you don't have to do it. The storage will automatically happen.
Right. It's pretty straightforward how to persist it. That is also a huge thing on its own. In fact,
Right.
improving the storage can improve a lot more. For example, the entire concept of cloud comes in in the storage part of it. Like, is the storage in your own laptop? Is it somewhere else? That changes the entire cloud concept.
But that is not something you want to talk about when we are learning coding.
Coding, exactly. So
Right.
not right. So initially, for part one of learning coding, the processing is what we touch.
Okay. Okay, I think I get it. Now let's see if people are.
Okay.
Okay, so Engineering Tomorrow has just sent a super chat. I am fascinated by the idea of coding and its endless possibilities. I try to bring myself to learn it, and yet I have never been able to learn it. What should I do? Basic idea on DS and logic. Wait, what is DS?
Data structures.
Oh, data structures. Oh, wow.
So this is what Jenny was talking about, that the basic concept of it at the core layer, data structures are the very basic layer. So how you, Jenny, maybe you can also add.
So data structures are, put very simply, you can store data into different objects, or you can store data in different forms. So some data structures that we'll touch upon today is something like an array, where you can store multiple variables into a particular object. Or like, I'll give you an example of a data structure where let's consider a table, right? A table of roll numbers and the names of students.
Okay.
Right? That's a data structure. That's a data structure where you're assigning a particular number to a particular student,
Right.
and the entire use case of that is to keep track of attendance.
Correct.
And that's very vital to keeping track of, whether someone is attending a lecture or not.
Yeah.
So that whole table of, roll numbers and students is a data structure of its own. And there's different forms of data structure. I mentioned blockchain before. Blockchain is itself as a data structure. We made it popular, but it's a data structure on its own. And there's so many of them. And what these do is that they make our jobs easier on finding and applying these algorithms and building these algorithms to solve a problem.
Right. Yeah, like in fact, the point is that we are data structures themselves make it so easy to keep track of data.
Right.
We technically in a school, you can do a roll call by reading out names and try to keep track of people by names. But then if one is missing, it would be much more difficult to know. Whereas if you just convert them all to numbers, now there's a sequence. And so we know that one is missing, or if there are two people on the same roll number or whatever, different kinds of errors. Yeah.
So I'll give you a quick example of data structures and algorithms both.
Sure.
So let's take into account social media. Let's take Facebook, WhatsApp, YouTube, whatever you consider social media, all these millennial apps that we have. Let's say I'm on it, and there's certain data points these companies have on me. So let's say my age, my name, my hair color is black. I am located in this city, so on and so forth.
Yeah,
these are all data
apparently
points.
Like 500 data points on every person.
Every single person.
What
and
is
they
that?
build this
The Great Hack, the
Great
Netflix
Hack
documentary.
Yeah. So they build this psychological profile,
Right.
and basically when you post something, or when you talk about something, or when you post a picture, or any kind of activity that you do, is added to your behavior.
Right.
And this is something like a profile that they build that feeds into their algorithm. And then every time you update yourself, you update to that social media, you're building a very strong profile and behavior of yourself to that algorithm, through which they can, understand what the people think and what the general narrative of the people is. So this can come into account in voting elections that we've already seen in the Trump election, or just, building features that product managers, when they come up with these features, they take into account like what's the thing that generates the most dopamine, and based on that preferences, we make these features so that you can get hooked on, and we can acquire customers to use these products.
It's
so
such
that's
a
the
shame.
algorithm.
It's like everybody's hacking our brains except us. I mean, knowingly, and we hack our brains unknowingly all the time, but then we don't really learn to hack our brains, and then everybody else is doing it for us. Ads, movies, music, everyone. Wow. Okay. All right. So okay, I get data structure. So it's a way of simplifying a really complex set of information.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So that's what he wants the basic idea of. Okay, I think that we explained it. I hope that engineering tomorrow. I hope you found the answer for this. Okay, now we have reached algorithms. We have talked about how coding is basically input and how to arrange the algorithm.
Correct.
Right? All right, awesome.
Perfect.
Have we reached coding?
Yeah, perfect. We have, I think.
Oh, lovely.
So input, storage, processing, output, that's clear. So the processing part of it is where we'll touch upon.
Okay.
And I think a lot of people have been pinging that let's get to actual coding. Let's try it out.
Yes. So let's jump in.
Try it out. Yes.
Absolutely into the deep end. Let's figure out some coding stuff and then come back and explain stuff.
Done.
Jen, do you want to talk? Do you want to take over?
Yeah, sure. So before I'll take only 1 or 2 minutes
Sure.
on this short little presentation that I've made.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
It should change the way you think about coding.
All right.
Hopefully. All right. So can you see?
Yeah.
Okay. So what we really want at the end of this is to be enlightened about programming, right?
Awesome.
And
Yes, I
shape
want
our
that.
opinion on the way we think about coding. So there's so many programming languages, but
Millions,
why are
apparently.
there millions of programming languages? And you can create your own, by the way. You can just Google it, and there's a simple way of creating your own programming language, naming it, building an interpreter, all the things. But why are there so many programming languages? And the reason for that is that these programming languages are built for specific domains and expertise and set of applications.
Okay.
Right. So if you
When
want
you
to
say
make
domains, you mean what?
So when I talk about domains, I mean that let's say your phone, right? Mobile applications.
Mm-hmm.
There's storage applications.
Right.
He mentioned cloud. There's web applications, right?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So different. Okay. So the different areas with which you interact with technology.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Different areas. And even if you boil it down to developing a product itself, there's different domains. Like, there's backend development where you focus on database, which is the storage part of it.
Right.
And there's these different domains that these are focused on. And these languages are built for that particular domain because they are trying to serve a specific purpose.
Which is so much more efficient.
Right.
Because human beings didn't do that.
Yeah.
So
we
everybody
to have our own language per.
Like every geography came up with its own language, and it's still true even for verbal languages that there are. It's well known. Like, so for example, they say that Italian is more suitable for poetry, and like different kinds of languages have a certain flair for different things. And we didn't develop them like that. Like everybody is using their one language for everything, whereas it would be so much more efficient if we knew multiple languages. And then suppose if you want to write a poem, you switch to Italian, and if you want to just have a conversation in the movies, or if you want to have a language for movies, then that could be another language, because I'm sure that every language has its own advantages and disadvantages.
Right. So some factors that we consider when we build a programming language is that it should be secure, it should be flexible, it should be learnable, and it should be simple, which means that any programmer, there shouldn't be a huge learning curve. And if you look at some of the modern languages that came recently, if you look at TypeScript, JavaScript, these are very easy to learn. And I think the more modern you go with these languages, it's getting simpler and simpler to learn them. And now even kids can learn programming. So that's why there's so many, and I hope there's more in the future that are even more simpler. And there's this whole revolution called no code that's going on, where people are building products that don't require any coding. So some programming languages, that we all know of is
languages
JavaScript.
That don't require coding.
Not language itself, but tools like products itself that don't really require coding. But some programming languages that we may have heard of is Python, JavaScript, Java.
Python OP is just going on in the why is this so popular?
So Python is it's a very powerful language. It's something that when I want to go really crazy, I use Python.
Okay. What a line.
At least for me. At least I think so. I mean, you can write 2 lines. I mean, you can Google YouTube videos where you can write 2 lines of Python and you can screw everything in your computer, or you can screw up a piece of code very easily.
Wow, that's too much power.
It's like a machine gun,
Okay.
But
The
yeah, there's
idea
all
of
these
Python is
languages.
also that when it got started, I think when they came up with Python, probably it wasn't such a big craze back then, right? It's like
Mhm.
there are these tools,
Right.
there are these data videos that comes up on which is the most common programming language, and you can see Python was always there for a while, and suddenly after data science took over, like the whole
Hmm.
machine learning and the AI thing
Right.
took over, people realized that, "Acha, I don't want such a complex, heavy language. I want something very simple and quick." So then Python just shot up like anything. Like because that was very easy to do a lot of things quickly with Python.
Okay. So like a
So
machine gun, like you just have to press a trigger and a lot of things get done.
a lot of things, yeah.
Wow. But then you need a lot of like delicate thinking to figure out, right? Like
Correct.
you
Correct.
might end up doing a lot of things that you didn't intend to, I'm
Didn't
guessing.
intend to, yeah. You have to be much more careful. That's the same difference between Java, JavaScript also. Java is much more structured and it's slow to write and it's much more detailed. And so
Okay.
JavaScript is very quick. You can do a lot of small things quickly. So now
Oh.
both has its pros and cons, of course.
So
But yeah,
a fun
back to you.
Yeah.
So a fun fact about JavaScript, it was written in 10 days by this person who used to work at Netscape. And it is, even today, it's JavaScript is like, it's so forgiving. It's one of those friends that you talk to that you ask anything, it'll find a way to do it.
Wow.
That's
I mean,
JavaScript in a
it
nutshell,
never
I
says
think.
no.
It never says no to anything. I think it's very programmer friendly language, and also very scary if you don't know how to use it, because
Right.
there's
Yeah.
so many things that are overlooked, which is why there's TypeScript, because TypeScript is a lot safer,
Okay.
which Microsoft took over and they were like, you know what, we're going to fix this and we're going to
Oh.
make a much more safer
So
language.
TypeScript is also a language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a
Okay.
elder brother of JavaScript.
I love how
Yeah.
you guys seem to have developed like personality
Yeah.
relation, like you're describing human beings.
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
limbic system stuff for
I love it. It's like यार Python आज बहुत mood off है. चल आज Java के साथ hang out करते हैं. It's like literally like you have a group of
people are
friends.
very, very possessive about their programming language. This is a real thing. Like when you
Right.
join a team and that team doesn't accept it, oh my god, you get angry. कि, "अरे, मेरा language है."
Okay. So they must be having like competitions of how does one to code the same thing, Java versus Python.
So I'm going to touch on that. I'm going to
Oh,
touch
Okay.
on this whole
Okay.
idea itself.
Cool.
I'm going to bring it on a high level overview and touch on like why do we put so much emphasis on the language?
Right.
Like
Right.
why do we always emphasize, and even on our resume we have all these languages written, and at the end you are just another programmer,
Right.
right? It's like, what does it mean? So why do we learn these languages, right? You might use one of these languages, or it may get you a job, or it's possibly the future, whatever that means.
Yeah.
Or somebody made me take one in college, and now you must suffer too.
Yeah.
But most of all, we want to warp our minds. We want to solve interesting problems, and it's not about the language itself, it's what you do with it.
Mm-hmm.
One great line one of my friends used to always tell is, never sell the technology, sell what it can do, sell its benefits. Right?
Sell hope.
Yeah, sell the benefits and sell what it can do rather than. So let's say I know a particular language. It's very important that how I apply that language in building a product or building something of value or creating something out of it than knowing a particular language.
Right.
So it's okay to know just one language. If you're really great at that, awesome. I'm sure you'll find someone who can work with you on that particular language rather than having like a string of languages, which is still important, but I think people put way too much emphasis on it.
It's sort of like, again, coming back to biology and sociology, because I mean that's all I know. People say that, oh, I know 10 languages, but then what do you say in those 10 languages? That is what matters, right? Because if you're talking crap in all 10 languages, that's not really benefiting anyone. But if you just know one and you have done a lot of amazing stuff, you've written a lot of good stuff, then that is what matters, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I completely understand that. That's awesome.
And even now, when you say the art of coding, it's not about coding in a particular language. The art of coding is the same
Right.
everywhere, because
Right.
it's how good, or when we look at how good the developer is, or how good an algorithm that person has written, it's
Yeah.
about how efficiently they have used that language's. That language has a lot of benefits, and language has a lot of tools and tricks that you can use.
Yeah.
So how well do you know your language, and how much can you use the value of that
Damn.
language?
Damn.
That's the
Okay.
art of coding for that language.
So you could literally like look at a piece of code and be like, क्या लिखा है? क्या लिखा है बंदे ने? Like
Correct.
ऐसा आप
Irrespective of the language, you can do that.
yeah, and you could be
Yeah.
like, ये ऐसा किसी ने सोचा ही नहीं. ये ऐसे हो सकता है. Nobody even thought of this.
Right.
Wow. Okay. Okay. My aim is to learn enough coding to appreciate something like that. Even if I don't code,
Makes sense.
I want to see a piece of code and be like, wow, okay, I can. It's sort of like modern art, right?
Yeah.
Once you start understanding what, like Picasso, first time you see it, or the 50th time you see it, kuch nahi samajhta. But then you read about it and then you go back and then you start seeing, oh wow, this is what he's done.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
See
So
the patterns.
see the patterns. All right.
So when we talk about these languages, one of the languages I think that's for anyone who wants to pursue computer science or just coding itself, one of the languages that I personally suggest, and a few others who are very smarter than me suggest, is Lisp or Perl. It falls under this
I haven't
category
even
of
heard of these.
functional programming or meta programming,
Okay.
where it looks a lot like mathematics. It's a set of inputs and outputs, and this is one of those languages where it really takes your brain and it just crushes you to think and write one line of code. It takes so much brain power.
Wow.
So I think it's very important to it's like learning Latin. I think we talked about this earlier, that
Yeah.
it doesn't really apply to any of the jobs that you might get, or even in the current code that you're working on, but it changes the way you think about coding, and it changes your mind. Like knowing Latin or Sanskrit changes the way you think about languages and the way you write
That's true.
and practice those
So
languages.
is it like so Lisp, you said Lisp and Perl?
Lisp and Perl.
So are they like the mother languages from where all the other languages came from? Is it something like that?
Not really. I mean, they were written in, so Lisp was written in the 1950s,
Okay.
and
So pretty old, yeah.
pretty old, but it's still so. Someone I think told us that some of the greatest ideas are the ones that hold the value of time.
Yeah.
So Lisp is one of the things that even you can use today to build your own product. And one of the examples is this Paul Graham's essay on beating the averages,
Yeah.
where he built this company called ViaWeb in 1995 using Lisp, and the technological advantage that he had over the 30 competitors that were doing the same thing at that particular time. That company
Wow.
got acquired by Yahoo in
Okay.
1999, which is when he left. And I think that's a time where Paul Graham became this icon in Silicon Valley, and then later he turned out to find this great company called Y Combinator, which is funding a lot
Oh,
of startups today.
yeah. Like wait, didn't they mention that in Silicon Valley? Y
Y Combinator is the
Combinator
one
or
which has funded Airbnb and
right.
so many more.
So some of the best companies came
Like
out of Y
incubator.
Combinator.
What do you call
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an incubator.
incubator? Right.
So again, I mean, these hackers and painters also talks about how programming is art, coding is art, and it's its purest form of art.
Yeah.
So yeah, if there's one thing you want to take away with this is the language doesn't matter. It matters what you do with it.
Amazing. I love that we have come to this conclusion so far, that it's art, because I feel like that I can handle. I mean, I'm familiar with the concept of art, and I think that if I look at it from that sense, for me it seems much more doable now, like if I think of it from that point of view. Okay, amazing. So Nikhil has asked us to discuss compiler development. It will give more insight on the working of machine and software interaction. What is compiler development?
So probably compiler is, I think we touched upon it a little bit. So compiler is where like we discussed this, right? So the core when I'm writing a programming language, I don't write it in ones and zeros. The compiler is, in a very basic essence, it's the one which converts the words and stuff that we write in the programming language into binary. But it's
Okay.
not just the converting into binary. It does a lot of other things to make sure that the system I'm communicating with the system via the language.
Okay.
The compiler is the one which takes the language and then communicates with the system.
I think that sounds a little like probably like a later day discussion. It might
Yeah,
get
exactly. We'll come back to that, especially in mobiles where, if for example, our programming language needs to know where we are.
Right.
So the phone knows it using GPS,
Yeah.
right? Or phone knows it using. So then how the compiler would be the one which connects that. Something to come back to, definitely.
So
But
puts
it's a very good
like
suggestion.
an association cortex, where it just puts everything together and gives you. Okay.
Like a traffic cop also.
Like a traffic cop. Amrita has asked, makes sense to have task activity based languages that everybody is equipped with rather than geography based. Example, everyone calculates in abacus format. Yeah, exactly, Amrita. That's what we were. It's a very interesting thought to know many languages, and instead of getting divided by region, get divided by use. Like for example, there are certain languages which it's super fun to just chill out with, or there are certain languages that are very efficient. Like we need to study this further because every language, like you said, every language can be used to code anything.
Correct.
Similarly, if you spend enough time on it, but certain languages will have inherent advantages for certain use cases.
Because it's probably built for something, right? So the person who built it thought of a certain way to do it.
Yeah.
I'll give you a simple example. So some languages, if I want to, by default, if I make, so A calls B, right? So some languages, when A calls B, A is expecting a response from B immediately.
Okay.
Some languages, when A calls B, A will just call B and let it go and not expect any response.
But that's A's personality, no?
Right. That this is what changes the personality of the language. Then you're like, yes, I a language hai, wo response expect nahi kar raha hai. What is it?
Oh wow.
But this is a different. This is the whole Node.js discussion which comes in that.
Wait, what? You just said something.
Node.js, the whole concept of Node.js, Node JavaScript. So Node.
तो ऐसा बोलना मतलब ऐसा don't just drop things and.
Node.js is one of the programming languages, but Node.js. So there the whole idea is it's asynchronous. So by default it will always expect it later on. It doesn't expect it immediately.
Okay, so it's like a very low maintenance kind of friend.
So there are benefits to it, there are pros and cons to it, but then the way the person who made it thought about it was very different from the way probably somebody who made Java did.
Okay.
Because the perspective with which you made Java was that long-term huge projects and you have to manage it in a particular way.
Right. Tell me this, doesn't it reflect the maker's personality? But like the Node.js guy is super chill, he'll make a super chill language, no?
Jaldi nahi aaram se response de.
So I'm sorry to cut you off, but maybe you can explain what asynchronous means. I think that's a very
a couple of people
new
have
word.
Asked, what is that?
Asynchronous is a very interesting thing. So let's look at it like this. So actually, I would like to come back to that because I wanted to quickly touch upon arrays and functions before that.
Sure.
And
Okay.
it would be much more interesting.
Cool,
but definitely, let's come back to asynchronous. Very interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you sharing?
Yes. I'll just share
Cool.
So we'll do a demo in the end.
So one second. So the idea is, I want to learn coding. Okay. So ये concept, I'm getting it. Like I'm getting the hang of coding का concept क्या है.
Correct.
Today's class has to have me coding at least one line. Okay.
Absolutely.
क्योंकि पैसा वसूल होना चाहिए. So like one line of code I need to make so that I can at least put it up and share on social media, because these days that is all the validation I'm getting. So one line of code has to go up. All right, that is your job.
That
Continue. Phoenix Abhishek has asked full stack development OP. Oh, that's your Jenil.
Great. Yeah. A lot of full stack developers out there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So just to explain, full stack meaning that you do the UI development and the middleware development and the backend development.
Oh,
so you do the entire stack across.
Think of it as
full stack was a company.
In cricket.
No.
No.
Okay. All right. Continue.
Full stack. Yeah. The stack would be the call goes from the UI. You touch the button on the
Yeah.
UI.
Okay.
It goes to the server in the computer, in the company server, and then goes back to the UI. So you write code for the entire journey.
Oh wow, that's like the full package. Like you'll
full
take
package.
care of the whole
Yeah.
thing.
The
Awesome.
full stack. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Please don't make this stream private. No, these streams will never be private. Don't worry. Only the Q&As are private afterwards. Deepika is saying it is so much fun to watch Dr. Sid grappling with new terms in coding. This is how we feel about neuroscience sessions.
Oh.
This is called, there is a word for it. This is called as Schadenfreude, I think. Watching somebody else struggle and finding happiness in it is... But it's fine. I completely understand. Happens to all of us. Okay, Srinath, what are you showing us?
Perfect. Okay, so let's just start off. So I think a lot of people already had pinged and asked on different chat places that, okay, if I just want to start off from scratch, what do I do? How do I do? So there were a couple of thoughts I had on how best to get started.
Mhm.
So the best suggestion I had was to start with Google Chrome.
Okay.
It's one of the easiest access that you can have to start writing code. Everybody would have had a Google Chrome in their systems, and
Sure.
all you would need to do is right click on a simple Google Chrome tab, an empty tab.
Okay.
And when you do right click, you can see the option of inspect.
Now I can. I've never noticed it before.
Right. So, so when you
Whoa.
click on the inspect element, you get a lot of things.
What is this?
Just zoom out. So the inspect is like the home ground of every web developer, every programmer who does this. So once you do inspect, basically whatever page is open, you get an entire element section of about that page. You know, the HTML. These are HTML codes.
Okay, hang on. So when you're moving your mouse across different lines,
yes, you can see the left side, it gets highlighted.
Oh my God. Okay.
Right. So you can see different parts of the screen getting highlighted. So in fact, if I just go to google.com and then I can see that the HTML section is updated. So now if I hover on this, each of the sections can keep on, it'll get highlighted. So I can also right click on a particular button and then click on inspect, and then that particular element gets highlighted.
Okay, so this is the amount of code that has gone into making that particular button.
Right. This is the amount of code, either it's automatically generated or it has been coded by the developer, either way.
Oh, wow. Okay, that is a lot.
Right. So that's fine. This is not what I want to start off with. This is way too much.
Okay.
This is just to give you an idea.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what I do want to start off with. Okay. So
Okay.
after elements, you have the section here called console. Ignore
Okay.
all the rest for now.
Okay.
All right. The console is probably the fastest way where you can just write your own small lines of code.
Uh-huh.
You want to write 4 or 5 lines of code. This is one of the best places to start.
Oh, you can directly go on Google Chrome and do this?
Just start with Chrome, right click, inspect element, and you have it. Inspect and console, and you start. This is your
Oh,
program.
wow. Okay.
This is probably the fastest way. Probably for, if you want Java, you have to set up your whole, there's something on a JVM that you need to set up. There's a lot of work that goes onto it. For somebody who's just getting started, this is the best place. Only thing is, this is JavaScript. The particular language is JavaScript.
Okay, so we are coding JavaScript.
We
right
are
now.
coding with JavaScript.
Oh, wow. Finally, we have reached coding.
Yes.
Awesome.
So we have reached the place where we're going to code.
Code something for us.
Okay, so let's start. So if
this is like, you know, when guests come over and be like, अच्छा कुछ गाना गा के दिखा.
नाच के दिखा.
अरे बेटा इतने लोग आए हैं, अरे 490 guests are here, just code something. Show uncle how you code.
घंटा हो गया, कुछ किया नहीं अभी.
Alright, code for us.
Okay, so perfect. So one more thing is, if suppose anybody in the chat wants to do this along, please do this. This will be a fun interaction.
Oh yeah, so they can do this with,
Exactly.
okay.
So on YouTube itself, you can right click and just click on inspect element. Any tab you can do it, right? So that's
okay.
All right. So
should I also, no wait, that'll be too complicated. Yeah,
I'll
do it later. Yeah.
You can just watch it.
Okay, continue.
Okay, cool. So let's come back to our basics. So we discussed on input, storage, processing, and output, right?
Yeah.
That was the original one. So we start off with the input. So input can be anything. So let's take input as numbers. So suppose you have a number 100 or you have the number 200. These would be numbers that comes in.
Yeah.
Right? Now, the first thing I have to do is I have to take the number and assign it, like what Jenil said before, to assign it to a variable.
Yeah.
So I have a variable called var a.
Okay.
Okay, I say var a is equal to 100.
Yeah.
So a now has the value 100.
Okay, wait, hang on. You said var is variable.
Right. So
And
I'm
then-
defining a variable called A,
Right.
and I'm putting the value of 100 inside A.
Okay. And then you did a semicolon.
Right. I put a semicolon.
So
yes.
what's the semicolon significance?
Semicolon is to end the line in JavaScript.
Oh, so in JavaScript, every time you put a semicolon, the line is over.
The line gets stopped. Yes, that's the end of the line.
Okay. Right.
Perfect. So var A is equal to 100
Got it.
and A. Now I just printed A. So I just wrote A and semicolon. So it prints the value of A home.
Okay, so every time you want to check कि अच्छा A क्या था, you can just
क्या
put
value?
A semicolon and you get 100.
You get
Okay.
the value.
Understood. Okay, cool. This much is done. All right.
To make it a little more, I think chat is really asking for it.
Okay.
You can also have a string. Now the
Dude,
most
chat
common...
is asking for what are they asking for
Yeah,
exactly?
they have very specific needs. Like,
I
okay, but one of the most common things that they want is instead of a number, I will enter
Hello
say,
world.
a word. Okay, var word is equal to hello world.
Okay.
So now this should keep the chat happy for a few minutes, I think.
Okay, so
More times
instead
they have been asking.
of A and 100, you put word and hello world.
Hello world. But
So-
if you notice, I put a double quote over it.
Exactly. Why did you do that?
So double quote is the syntax of JavaScript to put a word. This is called as a string in JavaScript. So if I just want to enter a number, I don't need any double quotes. But if I put double quote at the start and the end, then within the double quotes, you have the string, which can be
Okay.
any...
And that could be any number of words. It could be a paragraph also.
Right. With spaces, with any details, with any...
Okay. So, and that word, like word can be a letter also.
Of course, yeah. So in fact,
Okay.
for word, in fact, if you notice, the word var is actually just defining a variable. Right? So JavaScript, when I define a var word is equal to, I can also give 100 here because the word, this 4 letters have nothing to do with now there's a, now.
But
actually,
now you can't, right? Because now word is already hello world.
No, I can because of JavaScript. This is one of the things about JavaScript because it's very random. So if you look at this is why these are the pros and cons of JavaScript, because JavaScript lets you do a lot of random shit where you can just go around doing crazy things.
Okay.
Which is what Jenil was talking about when Microsoft took it over and made TypeScript.
Right.
A lot of these seemingly silly things were fixed with the TypeScript, which in the end compiles down to JavaScript, but it is a thing. So, but for somebody who's starting off who just wants to explore here and there.
So Vanshika is saying that hello world is like Sri Ganesha programming language.
Yeah.
Okay. So 1 second, there are a couple of questions. So Phoenix Abhishek has asked, console.log open and close bracket is a total savior OP. What is that? This is what you're saying. No.
Yeah. So instead of writing A and the semicolon, I can do console log and A. So it will do the 100. It will print out the 100. Or console log word would print out what is there in word, which because we also assigned word to 100.
So now you can't bring hello world back.
No, I can reset it, right?
Oh, you have to reset it. Okay.
I reset back word to hello world.
Okay.
So now if I do console log word, it'll give hello.
It'll come hello world. Okay. Hello world. Hi world.
All right.
Cool. And now Amrita suggested something, suggestion for what should code at the end of the takeaway, rule for life. Amrita is okay, I'm going to ignore that.
Yeah.
Okay. Amrita is the best. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll do that. If I can code that, I'll be super proud. And I have no idea what is that H1P/P something. Okay.
That's for
Cool.
next class. We'll
That's
take
for
HTML
next class.
separately,
Yeah.
Actually, that will be a very good class. One video to just make a website, like a small website. That will be interesting.
Okay.
Very basic.
Amazing. But this I can understand. All right.
Okay.
I understood.
This is clear. As we are just at the input. So we have gotten inputs like var A and B. Let me just clear the screen for now.
Yes.
So now, all the values that we saved are still there, even though we have cleared. It's just that this.
Can you put a variable as a number? Like 1 equals hello world?
No. So that's very interesting. So if I put 1 is equal to something, then I can't assign something to the number 1.
Why not? Acha.
Because the number 1 is already an actual number. It's not a variable. Right? For example, if I put it as A1, then A1 becomes a name of that variable.
Okay.
But A1, the value 1, the 1 is a value. I cannot assign the value.
But you can put ONE.
Of course.
Understood.
Right, because that is, if you see the
That's a
color
word.
wise also, it's a blue color here. So
Yeah.
it's a word.
Oh, right. So the color is also different. So the
Correct.
green are variables that you can't mess around with.
And yeah, so these orange would be a string word.
String.
So which
Okay.
is okay. String is fine. So because you can
Got it. All right. Cool. I'm getting the hang of this. Cool. Sid, learn about data types. All right. Variable is like an empty box. Number versus string. Teach that. Oh, number versus string. I think that's what you just taught me.
Yes. Correct.
Right. Green and yellow and all right. Cool. Go on.
All right. So very basic. So now we've created a variable, we've put number in, we've put string in.
Cool.
The same way you can also put, say, A2, I can put is equal to and give 10.5.
Okay.
It also works because then if I do A2, I get the value.
Okay. Cool. I'm a coder now. Awesome.
You're a coder. It's very straightforward. We've already gotten values.
Yeah. I can totally flex this.
Perfect. All right, let's do
Yeah. Now let me make my own social media app. Cool. All right.
Very, very basic. All right.
Yeah.
So, okay. So now, now that we've gotten the variables, now the next interesting, I think Jenil mentioned about arrays, right? So that would be a very interesting, the very basic introduction to a data structure. So just one variable is not enough to hold large amount of data. So you need to have a list.
Right.
The most basic concept of a list is when you have, say, I can actually give any name to it, of course, because this is still a blue word, but I can make the square brackets.
Oh, so the brackets are everything.
Are very important, yes. So you have angular brackets, you have square brackets, you have curly braces. They're very, very important. All of them have different meanings, and all of them have different meanings probably in different languages. So this is what you learn as syntax. So when you learn a programming language, you need to know how to assign variables. What are the programming constructs in that language? So like what would be the braces?
So coding is just about framing. Like how do you frame it?
Correct.
I mean, it's one of the things, right?
One of the things, of course.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Wait.
Did you understand so far? So right now what we've done is we've just started the
we just put square brackets. Cool.
Now inside this you can put anything with a comma in between. So 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
So now the array is now, instead of printing out one value, it has multiple values which I can now open.
Okay. How did you open it? Oh, acha.
There's an arrow button here, right?
Okay.
So now when I print out array, it gives me 3 values in it, 1, 2, 3.
But when you printed out, you typed in array and you put in a semicolon.
Okay, the semicolon is actually not needed in the console log. I don't need to put the semicolon. That is optional.
Okay.
Because I've just put the name of the variable, it'll print.
And you
that.
pressed enter. Okay.
I can also do console.log of array. That's what is actually happening here. When I do array, it is actually printing using console.log.
Okay, got it.
So basically what it does is it's this console, it accesses this console window.
Right.
And it adds a log. It adds a logging, right? It logs the value on this console.
Understood. And then you can open it, and so 1, 2, 3 comes as a line way. Cool.
So the 0th value is 1, first value is 2, second value is 3.
Okay. It starts from 0, the value.
It starts from 0, yeah.
0
is that important?
Yeah.
Okay.
It gets very crazy sometimes.
Okay. Jenil, I feel like you have something to say on this.
Yeah, I mean, when we were designing, there was this very simple algorithm where we had to come up with a simple mathematical equation, and we had a data structure. It was like an array, and it started from 0. That 1, 0, just because it started from 0, that messed up the entire mathematical equation that I came up with. Because in my head, when you think of just math, forget computers, just math, and you come up with a formula, you usually consider that it starts from 1 rather than 0.
Yeah.
Now, there's this field in mathematics called discrete mathematics where you get a pattern of numbers that it starts, and you have to detect what the pattern is. But when that 0 came, it was just so difficult and it just messed everything up. So it's very important to know that it starts with a 0.
Clearly, I mean, he's talking like, trust me,
Yeah,
it's very important.
Dil ka dard is like.
Okay, amazing. So tell me this, Srinath, the brackets are all part of the syntax.
Yes.
Cool.
Right.
Cool.
For example, in certain languages, you can't just put an is equal to and write this. You would have to put, say, a new keyword or a word called, you have to specify a particular word in order to define an array.
Okay.
In this particular language, in JavaScript, you can just write it like this to create.
Okay. Got it. Amrita, so Phoenix has asked about, variable, constant, function are all reserved keywords. So, I mean, that's inbuilt into the language itself.
That's a very, very important thing. In fact, a little while ago, when you were saying about how when you learned the word apple, the human brain learns apple over time.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing is, the word apple is not a fixed thing in the human brain. The brain was not born with the concept of apple. But
No.
here, it's not like that. The word A2 and array are something that we are defining in the lifetime of this code.
In this code, yeah.
But the word var is not like that. It's like, for example, the brain recognizing the chemical. Right? The word var is already a defined var. Or the brace itself, the programming language understands the concept of the brace or the comma or the semicolon in the end.
मतलब वो receptor level पे काम कर रहा है.
Correct. It already knows the word var. So when it sees the word var, that is what it knows as a keyword.
Yeah.
That's what everybody's talking about.
And this is there in every language.
Exactly.
Right? Every language will have its own concepts.
Of course, because you cannot just have dynamic variables, right?
Yeah.
Then there's no syntax.
Yeah.
You have to have certain things and then things that you can name.
Yeah. Not everything can be relative. Some things we have to assume as absolute.
Correct.
For the sake of making sense.
Correct.
Damn, dude, there's so much philosophy here.
Much philosophy, I know.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
What is static, what is dynamic?
Amrita has asked about how is the color changing? Is the color language coded? I mean, is the coding...
that's just, I mean, it's specific to the IDE you're using. Here we're using console. If you're using a specific IDE, you can change the color combination. It has nothing, I mean, there's no need to remember the colors here.
Okay.
It's just the UI. It's just it's a great way to segregate everything, but in essence, we want to make it look friendly and pretty.
Yeah. For sure. If this whole thing was black and white, I would be a lot more upset.
Yeah. So in some ways, you can also change the theme of it. So if you're using an IDE, you can use the theme.
What is IDE?
IDE is the environment where you code. So this is the environment you're coding here. It's the console. There's different IDEs you can download, and those IDEs are really like, you can choose a particular theme. You can choose a black and yellow theme, like whatever fits you. You can choose that theme.
Like your mood. Got it.
Yeah, and then you can make your own customized thing.
Damn. Okay. So somebody who's spending a lot of time coding will try to personalize their coding environment to make it as like as friendly towards them as possible. Awesome. Okay. Amazing. All right. Now what?
Okay. So now we have touched upon defining a single
So
value.
array क्यों करना है?
Okay, array क्यों करना है? Because you would want to, say for example, if you want to go from, if you want to do something 10 times, right? So now you would need to, we'll come to loop, but loop is a separate thing. But basically the idea is that if you want to save multiple values, suppose like the roll call thing, if I want to save 10 names of roll calls, so then I would have a roll call is equal to, and I would have all the names over here. So first name could be Alex.
Oh wait, so every name has to be in a separate quote,
string.
Double quote.
Yes, because double quote is just making it into a word.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Instead of a double quote, I can also have an array, and then it can have Alex, but it can also have 100.
Okay.
So which means now it has one string and one number.
Okay, got it.
Simple. It's just a list. It's a list of any kind of input.
Understood. Okay.
The chat is going to go very crazy by seeing this, because this is what makes JavaScript really messed up. Because I can put two different types of numbers.
Yeah, exactly.
And one string.
How does this make sense?
Yeah, I know. That's what makes it very irritating for JavaScript, and it makes it very quick to use.
Yeah, clearly somebody made it in 10 days for sure.
Yeah, this is
भाई तुझे जैसे बनाना है बना, मेरा 10 दिन में मुझे submit करना है. Someone's asked, why does the array position start with 0? Siba Prasad Tripathi has asked. Is that a too complicated question?
No, actually, but it's a very interesting question though. I've thought about it because over time, every time my system crashes with this very common thing called array index out of bound, every time we are like, array, एक number की वजह से it
Oh,
crashes.
is that why it's called array?
Array. Yeah, probably.
Okay, cool.
I'd rather not answer this question.
Okay, it's too
It's too
personal.
personal.
All right. Okay. Cool. Okay. I already feel like I'm beginning to get it. What's next? So what is the next step?
Okay, so actually this is the input part of it. Okay.
Okay.
So there are three big things which I really want to cover. I don't want to spend as much time as I did here, but very important things. So the three big things that I want. Okay, this part I think I already covered: input, storage, processing, and output. Right?
Okay.
Okay. So now apart from this, if you really want to do any kind of programming, so there would be three core concepts. One is that if I want to decide that, okay, I have to do a lot of logic, right? The core concept of a logic is a condition, right? So this is known as a if-else.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah.
So for example, if I want to say that add the number 1. So I'm going to give an input number, right? Which could be anything, right? It could be 100, it could be 200, it could be whatever.
Yeah.
But I have a condition saying that only if it is a number 150, then you add the number 1.
Okay.
Some kind of a concept.
Sure.
Or only if it is an odd number, then you add 1. So all the numbers will become even then. Right? Some kind of a logic.
Right.
Now this is how logic is built. If even in any kind of logic, when you take the word logic, it's always if and else. If it is so and so, then do this. Else it is so and so, do this.
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
That's how conditioning works, right? Because if it is so, then go here. So this is how the concept of branching comes in. Right? If it is so, do this. If it is so, do this. So this is the first concept of programming, independent of programming language. It's there everywhere.
Yeah.
The concept of if else.
And logic is programmed.
Correct. Okay. Yeah. So we call it a little different. So when we say the code, what was the logic of the code is how you say it. Logic is programmed is when you're saying it actually like the word. Yeah. Yeah, that's also true.
Wow. Okay. No, I think I'm tripping on a different concept right now. But yeah. All right. Continue. Let me understand if else properly. This is
actually the very basic of it. So if I want to, if so and so wants, if you want to do so and so, then for example, if I want to, maybe you can also give different examples, Jenil. So
in the end, I'll show a demo which covers if else and for loops and arrays, which is going to be a great way to sum it all up.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Then we can talk
I don't
about
want
it.
to spend too much time in the examples. I'll just explain the three basic constructs on it.
Sure.
Right,
so then we'll use Jenil's thing as an example for all three.
Exactly.
Okay.
Oh, that will be perfect.
All right.
Perfect. So then the three basic constructs will be, one is the if and else loop, which will be the condition.
Yeah.
So I think somebody has given an example of if age greater than 18, then vote. So it's a perfect example.
Yeah.
So if age greater than 18, then vote. Else, you can't just handle it as don't do anything. You have to handle it as something. If the input comes in as an age and the age is above 18, perfect. Then you know the output is yes, you can vote.
But if it is under 18,
If it is under 18, you can't just pretend as if I didn't get any value. You have to handle it. That's why the else comes in.
Right. So in the else, you'll be like
throw an error or say that no, you can't.
Wait for 2 years. Wait for 3 years.
Wait for 2 years.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah. It's not really worth growing up or something like that.
Right. Got it. Cool.
Right. So that would be the condition. Perfect. So now
what is
second
loops?
part is loop. So loop is in general, if you want to do any kind of coding, you have to, the concept of an iterative or a concept of a loop comes in, that you want to do something n number of times, which is pretty straightforward. Like if
so
I want
every time somebody comes who's above 18, you have to make them vote.
Correct. So for example, if I get 10 students or 10 people who are coming in, for each of them, I have to check the age.
Right.
So here I would probably go for a loop across the 10 students from 1 to 10. I would go through a loop for these 10 students, for the 10 people who are coming in. For each of those 10 people, I will check the age and then handle it accordingly.
So how do you code this?
Right. Perfect. So this I can just show here. So if else is actually very straightforward. So say I have a var age is equal to 20. This much is clear now.
Sure.
Superb. So now age is 20. So now age, if I print out, I get 20.
Got it.
Now my code will be if age greater than 18. No? So now you notice the curly braces. So not the curly, the round braces, right? The round brackets.
Yeah.
Okay, these are the round brackets. Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, it's greater than or equal to 18.
Yeah, exactly. Huh.
Superb. And if this is the if condition, now under this if, I have to mention what happens under the if. So I would have the curly braces.
Okay.
Okay, here I can say console.log go would.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
But else.
Huh.
So now else, I can also write else the age is specifically equal to 17 if I want to do something.
Huh.
Right. So here I can write console.log wait for a year. Right?
Okay.
I can put the semicolon so make it clear for you.
Yeah.
So now this else I will write another if over here. Because this if is specifically for this else. Finally, if I want to say for everything else, then I would just have a separate one here.
Okay.
So now anything except for above 18 or 17, matlab 0 to 16 will all come under this. Or if age value doesn't exist or anything else also.
Correct.
Everywhere else it will happen.
Yeah. So then in this else, what will you write?
So here I can write console log. I can write stay young and chill. Okay.
Okay.
So now this is your one.
So won't the semicolon come at the absolute end or no?
That's not needed. Ideally, in every programming, in every statement is where the semicolon comes in.
Okay.
It's not needed.
Okay.
There are certain ways in which you program. That's up to you.
Okay.
Here, usually it's not done.
All right. Understood. So we have learned 3 brackets so far. So the square brackets is for what? The A? No. What was the square bracket for? Arrays. Right. Okay. Square bracket is for arrays.
Arrays. Yes.
All right. The round bracket is for both.
Within
is
the
for if.
The condition itself. The actual condition will come inside the round bracket.
Okay. Okay.
Code to be executed if that condition is true would be the curly braces.
Okay. Fine. So the square is for arrays.
Yeah.
The round is for condition. And the curly bracket is for execution. If
so the round is not just for condition. The round is, think of if as if itself is like a person. So you are passing something to if.
Okay.
Anytime you want to pass something to somebody, you pass using the round bracket.
Round thing. Okay.
So you're passing this whole age greater than 18 to if.
If. Okay.
And if will decide yes, it's a valid thing, then it will pass it into this part, which is the curly braces. Curly braces will be for the actual code.
Okay. Yeah,
so don't get too caught up with remembering, because these braces, different types, can be used for multiple things when you learn more coding about it. Okay. I think the best way to get used to it is just coding itself.
Okay.
The more you practice, the more you get used to what is used where. So just don't get caught up with, I have to remember all of this. And just try to understand what's happening is the most important.
Yeah. So okay, but I think I'm beginning to understand. So now can you do an example of say somebody who comes to you with age of 16? So can you just type? So what happens? So you just type in 16 and click.
No. So okay, we'll come to that. That's actually the third part. We'll come to that in a second. But age is equal to 16.
Enter.
Okay. Enter. So now age has the number 16 in it.
Okay.
Now the problem is this code is already executed here. Now I want to execute this code again over here. I'll have to copy paste this whole thing here and then click here. So now this word number age, the variable called age had the number 16 in it.
Right.
Then it went to the first line here. It went inside if, it tried to pass this value, it failed. So then it went into the next
next one. Okay.
So here it tries to go, it fails. So then it goes to third one and says this.
Okay. And this is all JavaScript.
This is a syntax with JavaScript does it. The concept remains same.
Got it.
Right? Yeah. But the concept is the same, but in different languages, there would be different ways to write it.
Yeah.
Our intent of writing an if-else condition is there across.
Understood. Yeah. Understood. So there are people who are saying, don't write anything now, Siddharth, just listen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense, but yeah, I have this
No, but it's
habit
important. The
of,
first time you're learning it, it's very interesting.
yeah,
Like write it
exactly.
down,
So,
and then like you mentioned in your taking notes video, I think
correct,
name is also
exactly.
there.
Yeah,
So,
this is me taking notes, and then later
yeah,
on I'll make notes, so then that's
yeah.
different. So Phoenix has said IDE is integrated development environment. Okay, that's the full form. All right. And Amita said, what I meant to ask is that this coding language is performing certain tasks on command, right? That means this is also coded to behave a certain way. How was the first coding language made then? Oh,
Oh,
so it's like what is built on what? So even
right.
for a language, somebody to say A is apple, वो भी बोलने के
This,
लिए कुछ तो समझना
yeah.
चाहिए ना?
So this is where the whole compiler thing would probably come in.
Okay.
Jamal, maybe you can also then you can.
So let's take an example, right? Let's
Yeah.
take warfare. So so I hate the words computer science together because a lot of coding and computer science is a mixture of mathematics, physics, and science, engineering, all of this clubbed together. It
Yeah.
just spews out this thing called computer science.
Yeah.
Uh, so if you go back to physics, right? Let's say we're in this situation of a warfare where we need to shoot a cannonball.
Mm-hmm.
We need to figure out the distance, we need to figure out the perfect angle, we need to figure out the speed, and we need to figure out at what point do we want it to land and calculate based on that output, that
Correct.
desired output that we have, so that that cannonball
Hits
lands
the target.
exact
Yeah.
hits the target exactly where we want it to.
Yeah.
So what we want, like in a sense, what we want, programming or calculation, what we want to do is to figure out to automate that process where a hardware or a piece of software can calculate all of that and do all of that physics that otherwise we'd have to do manually
Correct.
automatically, so that we can automate that calculation process, or you can call that even an algorithm,
Sure.
so that our desired output is achieved in real time whenever we need it in the time of need.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No,
so that
that I get. That why do we need this algorithm, and why? Because to make all those calculations sort of um, like outsourcing. We are outsourcing.
Yeah. That's it.
I mean, we're taking very simple examples, but a lot of times we're tackling very complex problems
Yeah.
where we need to apply these first principles into those complex problems. And once we are really good with solving simple problems, we move on to complex problems that we may or may not have the answers to.
Right.
And these principles help us to get there.
Yeah. So again, I think I'm coming back to Amrita's question because it is interesting that what was JavaScript coded with? Like, how did he make JavaScript? Like, he must have used some language, right?
And more importantly, what was the first programming language coded?
Ha, exactly. Like, because
So
even
there's
animals have
this
language, and
Yeah.
one thing just evolves to the next.
So there is, I think somebody has already answered it. Ketan from the chat has already answered. Assembly code karke there is a concept.
Oh,
So
wow.
assembly code is like initially, I think at the start of the session we discussed about the whole the chip concept, the core microchip or microcontroller, and
Yeah.
that understands assembly code. So when it's basically at the end of the day it is voltages, right? It's electrical pulses.
Yeah.
So there is a language written at that level which that chip understands.
Okay.
So the compiler is basically converting whatever your language is it into that language. So
Hmm.
that programming language is much more difficult to write in as compared to
Obviously.
this. Because
But
when
there are people doing that. So
no, it's not about people. Everybody had to do it initially. In fact, in engineering, it's one of the languages there. The
Oh.
microcontroller is one of the languages.
Oh,
It's a chapter. It's a syllabus.
damn. Okay. All right. So
Sorry,
So-
Jenil, you were saying something?
yeah.
So there is this language called MIPS, MIPS,
Mm-hmm.
which is assembly language,
Yeah.
assembly level language. And I think, I appreciate the curiosity, and I hope it doesn't
Yeah.
die when you discover what assembly language actually is, because in engineering itself, some of the worst classes that, my general opinion, and one of them is assembly language programming, that nobody wants to deal with that.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to hear it.
The irony here, people are like, what is it? What is it?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So an engineering teacher or like a professor would come to this chat and be like, "Ala, udhar to koi sunta nahi hai,
Udhar koi
yahan pe
sunta
poochte
nahi hai."
hain." Yeah.
if you want to design your own coding language and
Hmm.
compile it, there's this language called Antler, ANTLR.
Okay.
You can Google it. There's tutorials on how you can make your own language and specify your own rules that
Right.
nobody else would even understand. Just go crazy, So
Antler.
there is Antler, ANTLR.
Okay, guys, Antler. Check out Antler. All right.
Oh man,
Wow.
somebody in the chat wrote 8085 and 8080. Oh man.
What is
Those are
that?
like those
I've never felt more out of place from my
that
own
is
chat. Like, what is
so that
happening?
is those are just those just microcontrollers, man. So they are the chip, the core. Basically we talked about the chips, right?
Right.
So what those chips can understand. There are types of chips
Correct.
which you are coding on top of,
Huh.
and
So,
one of the worst syllabus things in engineering.
oh, so
That is,
when these okay, Amrit Skanda, I just worked on an Antler project. Man, okay. Some really awesome people here, yeah?
yeah.
Amazing. So tell me this. So like if Qualcomm or Intel is they're making a chip,
Hmm. Hmm.
do they have to code the assembly language with it? Is it like
That's a
that?
good question.
Yeah, like ignorance brings the best questions.
Yeah.
So
Like when you have no clue.
let me
पूछने में
let
क्या
me try
जाता
to
है?
let me try to simplify it.
Yeah.
So let's say a company wants to build their own architecture, which by the way a lot of companies do.
Yeah.
Although in my opinion they don't always need to,
Mm-hmm.
but they still do it, and they end up building ill-documented architecture that none of the developers understand, and everybody
Ah.
feels lost. But let's
So
say a
that
company does want,
bottoms up approach, right? Like that's like Apple is
yeah,
building a bottoms up approach sort of.
right. So
Yeah.
everyone wants to build it from scratch. So
Hmm.
we can go back to like this networking where it's divided between, there's different layers where it builds up top to the application layer.
Yeah.
So you start from the very bottom, which we can just call it the architecture part of it,
Yeah. The chip
where you're
itself.
where you're building the architecture, and a way for the operating system that you're operating on. You pick an operating system, and you want that operating system to understand and work well with that particular architecture you're building.
Correct.
And then eventually, once you have that base architecture prepared with
Mm.
assembly language and all the functions or use cases you want to achieve,
Mm.
then there's the application layer, which a lot of the developers work with when they're hired at that company,
Mm.
and they build on top of it, which is sort of the proprietary aspect of that particular company. So you go out of that company, and
You can't
you
use
go
that
to,
in
you
yeah.
can't use that. That's what Google does. That's what a lot of companies does. That
Yeah.
they have their
So
own thing.
even Tesla, right? Like so Tesla being a car company, I think they made their own chips for the recognition. I mean self-driving and all of that. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm just showing off a little bit of what I know.
Not, I mean, technically
They didn't?
they don't make their own batteries. I think Panasonic still makes it.
No, batteries, yeah. Although they are supposed to come up with this million mile
Yeah,
battery or whatever.
ideally they want to do it all
Yeah,
in-house.
but the chips, the AI chips
Yeah.
that they have, that they made
Yeah.
in-house, as far as I know.
Yeah.
For their self-driving cars.
Right.
That's how they figure out.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay. Where were we?
All right. So
Yeah.
I think we were almost, we were discussing about, but before that, the chat is amazing to read, man. I'm really
Yeah. I
having a
think
lot of
you are
fun to read.
flipping out. You are flipping out on the chat.
Way more. It's really fun to have like a so much connect. Okay, so one thing which so that we forgot
What,
to discuss
SpaceX
about.
uses Node.js, really?
Yeah. So Google
Amazing.
Chrome is itself built with the V8, which is Node.js.
Google's V8 engine. Yeah.
Okay.
So Node.js, Chrome is the one which made it like a big deal, and then everybody went gaga over it.
Okay. Wow. All right. Amazing. मुझे कुछ तो बोलना था यार, मैं भूल गया.
No, but there's one more thing in the chat. Multiple people have asked to talk about Moore's law.
Oh
So,
yeah, I've
Moore's
heard
law
of
is a
Moore's law.
very, very interesting concept. So over time, like how software, maybe talk about programming language and how things have improved and how things have diversified into different programming languages.
Mm-hmm.
Hardware has a similar thing called Moore's law. So Moore's law was that it'll exponentially basically in a very, very simplistic terms, the first computer took an entire room. And now what that computer can do can be done on your watch. So this was done exponentially over time.
Because the hardware got better.
Hardware got better, exactly, to handle the software.
And the software also got better, obviously.
Software, obviously, yeah. But there are things that the software can do now which probably would require much complicated hardware previously.
Yeah, like so I mean I've heard of different times in history where somebody's come up with an idea and said that our technology is not there yet. So it's like the concept is there, but then
Correct.
like even I mean a couple of stories on Nikola Tesla's certain inventions that he made out the calculations and everything like how to make this, but then we don't have the technology to make it yet. Uh, yeah, so
Interesting.
yeah, I get that.
Interesting. Yeah.
So when you said that, so when you said of how it's evolved to a watch,
Yeah.
again, it's very similar to human evolution, or rather
Absolutely.
biological evolution,
Absolutely. Yeah.
right? And uh, so one thing that's always interested me is how so software and hardware.
Mhm.
In terms of hardware, the brain, the network itself, the way the wiring is connected, which is how I think even in a chip, it's sort of like transistors getting connected to each other, kind of, right?
Correct. Correct.
So if you compare that to neurons connected, I don't think in the last maybe 50,000 years, the brain itself has changed much.
Right.
So like the home from whatever fossil studies we have and all that, like Homo sapiens jab se hua hai, I forgot 1 million years or 50,000 years, but whatever. Definitely since a long time, the shape of the brain and the lobes and all of that hasn't changed,
Right.
at least बाहर से. But obviously software तो बहुत develop हुआ है, बहुत change हुआ है, because software is language, and as like more and more languages came, and the efficient use of language evolved,
Right.
right? And but the probably बाहर से same दिखता होगा, but अंदर से the way the networks are connected are definitely changing, because they're
Right.
changing in your own life. Forget about
Yes.
across generations.
Yeah.
So that is the advantage of a biological computer versus a mechanical computer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such an amazing thing if you start comparing that with there are so many sub tangents of thoughts that I had when you were saying that. For one thing was that the hardware, the human brain has not evolved as much as the hardware has evolved. That is one part of it. Yes. Right. But also that when you look at it in one person's life, what you do with the hardware, which means our personality or our PFC or our this, that is constantly evolving. What we say, like we
Exactly.
learn, the concept of learning comes in.
Yeah.
So what is very freaky is even in machines, when we talk about code in terms of software is meant, the whole concept of machine learning is that the software can learn, that it knows that this is the existing amount of information. I use that information and learn and get better, which is exactly like humans. But
Can hardware learn?
Can hardware learn? That is such a crazy thought. Now, when you were saying, I was thinking, because even when we imagine AI movies like, iRobot, or if you imagine an AI movie,
Terminator.
Terminator, we never think about the robot. Like, it decides that, okay, my machine gun is not enough. Let me improve my machine gun. Like, change my hardware.
Yeah, you remember the Terminator the villain, Terminator 2 villain. He had a very fluid hardware, so he could change the shape.
That would be the ideal way, that because it's not, we even now when we're talking about Google having AI and all of that, we are still thinking in terms of the software automatically improving itself.
Oh damn, are we
But
talking
imagine
about
the hardware can automatically improve itself. That would be the crazy way, like.
Damn, we are talking about what was that movie? Apna Decepticons wala, Transformers.
Right.
Like those
not
guys.
Just into a car, but
yeah, but those guys could like evolve their hardware in real time, not just software.
Correct, but basically change the wiring.
Change the wiring.
I don't know what that even means.
Yeah, but that is so cool, because that is probably where we are going.
Yeah.
Right.
There's clearly benefit, because if the humans could do it, that will be so amazing for us.
Yeah.
I remember the Sapiens, the author is there, right? He has the other book he had that written, the second book.
Homo Deus.
So there he had mentioned about this thing where in the future we'll replace every part of our body with a gadget.
Yeah.
So it'll initially start off with requirement. Somebody's hand is broken, so then they'll replace it with a robotic arm. But eventually the people will be like, why should we use our own hand when the robotic arm is so much better?
Yeah.
So then over time, the robotic arms can improve. So the brain in itself is not so great right now. Let's get an updated version. I need an OS
Yeah,
update.
that brings us to Neuralink, I think. But then that is a different. We'll talk about it. Yeah, Jenil,
I think the end goal is to pass the Fermi complex.
Correct. The filter, the great filter.
Yeah, the great filter. So
Yeah.
we must get there.
We should talk about the Fermi like the Fermi paradox. Like just that. Once one stream, we should do just that.
Yeah.
Done.
Like it'll be super crazy. It'll be all conspiracy theories and kya hoga and all that. But
Yeah, Rick and Morty style.
yeah, exactly. We should just do that. I find that super interesting. I hope that I mean I'm sure this chat. I'm sure they've heard of Fermi's complex and
People are talking about neuromorphic hardware. That's
So then I mean this chat is at another level only.
Yeah.
Kya, what a
Siddharth, you're doing intellectual stuff.
oh man, dude, I'm getting such a kick out of this. I can't tell you. So today, a company reached out. They're doing hardware stuff. They're making virtual reality and augmented reality stuff, and they wanted to talk about, like they wanted to know if they could collaborate and talk about virtual reality and augmented reality, like on the streams, just to improve, like just to start the conversation around it. So obviously it would help them also because they would, like people would know about it.
Yeah.
But then they were like, don't even mention our company's name. It's not, that is not the point. But we just want to talk about it. Like we just want the conversation to happen because in India there are so many intelligent and interested people who may not have access to thinking about these things, and we are waiting for the West to come up with those machines and bring them here. But if we could get like engineering students in their second year thinking about stuff, then in the next 10 years what they will create will be something very different, right? So that thought has to come. And
I so wish this conversation was something that I could have seen when I was in engineering, because when somebody taught me 8085, I did not find the reason why I was learning 8085.
What is 8085? For God's sake.
8085 is just one of the chips that
it's a chip. Okay.
It's a microcontroller.
All right.
And we were made to learn like horrible, like what I'm telling you, this whole multicolor thing where age is a different color, if is a different color.
Yeah.
That was not the case. It is a horrible UI. Not fun.
Yeah. Sure.
Plus, we had no idea where we are going to use this, why we are going to use this.
Correct. All right. So this will be pretty awesome to. Okay, I'll tell you
build
what.
On top of this.
I'll let you in on a secret. Okay. What is the purpose? What is the purpose of this channel? What are we doing? We are trying to figure out. Reality. Okay.
Right.
And it starts with neuroscience, and it will end with neuroscience.
Right.
But because that is how perception is. But all these other things, so psychology is a way to look at reality. Philosophy is a way to look at reality. Coding is a way to look at reality, because more and more our reality is through coding. Like everything, you and I are now connecting because of coding. Right? Chat is connecting with me because of coding. Right? So that is a huge part of reality. Gita is a part of like a way to look at reality. So the concept is that, right? And so if this augmented and virtual reality also come in, that is also fitting into that thing of how to look at reality is the end goal. Cool. So then everything we do will be on that, like on that path. We want to figure this out. बहुत हो गया. बहुत हो गया. So let's chat, you, me, all our friends. We will figure this out. We will figure out what is reality. Shivam, coding OP, can you please give links to? Oh wow, a lot of things. Q, heap and tree with art concept. I love art. I can quickly when it is related to art. All right, we'll try our best, Shivam. Jenil.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? What's up? What are you thinking?
No, I think, we can take it slow and we can go like step by step and understand like few things. It's clearly, it's not a race. We can take our time and
absolutely
get to a point where everyone can independently make their own things. I think what technology did, especially with COVID-19, it accelerated 20 years worth of progress that we should have done.
Yeah.
And it gave us like a reality check saying, hey, like you need to
Yeah.
buck up. And so that's what happened. And a lot of these problems, like if you think about, let's say, poverty, how can we use technology to solve that? Let's say healthcare, how can
Yeah.
we use technology to solve that? And there's existing solutions out there.
Yeah.
But if everyone knows how to code, or everyone understands how to interface with technology,
Yeah.
then the development will be much more faster.
Yeah. And everybody gets a say.
Yeah.
Because right now everybody is using a language they don't know and understand. So it's sort of like how earlier literacy was curtailed. Like
Right.
poor people weren't allowed to read.
Mhm.
In like 100 maybe 300 years ago in the US, African Americans weren't allowed to read.
Yeah.
So literacy is a way of ensuring what do you call it, like consolidation of power.
Right.
So if from here on out all communication is going to be through code, which is how it is, by the way, we just don't see it, but we are all connected through code, and if only a select few have access to it, it's such a like it
It's
is
a
just
shame.
wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are going to
Handicap, which is an unnecessary handicap.
break. Right. So yeah, today I've learned brackets, but now nothing can stop me.
Kickstart. All right, so chat
right.
is getting really restless.
Jenil,
Chat is
yeah.
like, next kya karna hai?
Let's talk
So,
about the
Do
demo.
you want to wrap it up with one more concept and then we'll jump into the
Okay,
demo?
what's the concept?
Just one last thing is, I think that will also be a good segue to his thing.
All right.
Because so what we showed here was the if else part of it. Now you can just expand the screen.
Yeah, I did.
Okay. All right. So just, I don't want to take too much time here, but
Yeah.
we discussed about the if else part of it, and a similar concept of a loop,
Mhm.
right? A loop would be that if you want to do it n number of times.
Yeah.
So a simple loop could be something like this,
Mhm.
where I say I is equal to 0, I less than 10,
Mhm.
I plus plus.
Mhm.
Okay.
Sure. Random
So,
things. Okay.
Right. So now I'll just quickly explain. So
console.log.
All right. So
okay.
I'll just quickly explain what just happened.
Wow, that was like magic. All right.
All right. So very, very straightforward, not very complex, but I'll explain. So similar to how we had an if loop, we have a for loop.
Okay.
So if was more of a condition.
Hmm.
If you want to do this, then if x is equal to y, then do this.
Hmm.
But a for loop is more like I'm giving a big explanation over here inside for,
Okay.
and then the same concept, the curly braces, which is where the actual condition happens.
Got it.
We have already touched upon console.log, which is just going to print the value. That's it. Right? So now I define a variable called I, right?
Yeah.
And I will go from 0 to 9. So which means it will go for from 0
less
to
than
9.
Yeah.
Right? And for every time it does this action, it will go on adding one more number to I. I plus plus is basically increase.
The number of plus is relevant, like two pluses?
No, it's plus plus will just add one more number always.
And if you put plus 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 plus?
No, there's no such thing.
Oh.
Well, you'll be silly if you do it. Yeah. There's no such thing. No.
Judgment. Okay, cool.
So it's silly question.
All right, awesome. I think that's pretty straightforward.
Perfect. And I think one last thing would be that what we showed here was that the if else we had to copy paste all over again.
Yeah.
Now, this is the last thing to explain.
Yeah.
Can I give this a name?
Uh-huh.
That is called as a function.
Okay. This whole thing.
Right. So this entire code, I can put it inside something known as function.
Oh.
So function f1.
Huh.
All right. And here I will do I pasted the code over here.
Okay.
Right. So f1 is the function to get this, and probably I can pass the input variable of age.
Okay.
Right. So whenever I get age, it will print the value accordingly. So now f1 of, and I can pass say
18
16
or 16. Yeah, cool. Stay young and chill. Oh,
but f1 I can reuse it with 18.
Yeah, go vote.
Right. So now I don't have to keep doing it. This is the basic building block. Now I've defined one function.
Correct. And that f1 can be anything. F350.
It's a name. it's not, even the F is not needed. I can rename it as anything.
Oh, okay.
The F1, if you remember, the same color as age. So
Age,
basically,
so it
it's the
could be
same.
anything.
It's a
So
variable. It's
F
a
in the
name.
chat. F in the chat. Okay, awesome. All right, amazing. Got it.
That's it. These are just the building blocks, and Jenil, over to you.
Cool. All right.
Cool.
Okay.
And yes, somebody had also written if there's a homework. I think that's a good idea, right? If we're going to make this a series, maybe a small homework.
Yeah, we will definitely give homework. I need homework. I need to. Okay, node V12. All right.
Okay, so let me give like a brief like introduction to what I'm gonna show. So now that we've seen like what for loops and if else and everything else is, we're gonna apply it to a dating app. So I know that teens and everyone, we all love dating apps and we all love to swipe right and left.
Okay.
So I decided to make like a mini Node.js dating app. It's called Settl. And Settl is a parody dating app to Tinder, which means that I'll give you an example. Let's say it's a Saturday night, you're watching Netflix, you've paid a lot of money to Netflix every month, and you don't know what to watch on Netflix because you're too sad and lonely, and you're 25 years old, and people are pushing you to get married, and you're looking at Facebook and Instagram, and you're looking at your high school friends who are all doing so well in their lives and figured it all out. So that would be a great
hypothetical, no?
It's all
this is getting too real. I'm already in the middle of a story, man. Like
yeah, continue.
So that would be a great time to open an app like Settl. At some point, everyone should settle down, or so the people, the elderly, say to us. So that's why I named the app Settl. I'm open to other names that may be more fun
Settl is perfect,
or have like a dark humor vibe to it. So what does this program do? It's a very small program, so I'm just going to run it and we're going to walk through it and understand.
Okay.
So it says start dating with Settl. It's a welcome message. It's not only what you deserve, it's all you're going to get.
I loved how he's removed the E. That's the typical thing which all startups do, just remove one.
One letter.
That's beautiful.
So it's made for the true millennials who are existential and who are looking to just settle. So let's start. It's asking for my name here. So I'm going to put in my name.
I'm remembering that channel week ad. Itna paisa mein itna hi milega. All you're gonna get.
Yeah. So there's a message, right? It says, "Hi, Jenil, welcome to Settl. We can help you find someone who can put up with you."
Yeah.
Right. So before we begin, obviously, I'm gonna ask for your Instagram or your Snapchat ID because you're gonna ask her that anyways. So might as well take the conversation there because nobody wants to chat on a dating app. Everyone wants their personal Instagram ID or Snapchat. So might as well just talk there. Why build a chat interface? So I'm gonna put in my Insta.
Okay.
Right. So perfect. Now tell us a thing or two about.
People
myself.
are going to look for this app, by the way, on the Play Store. They'll be like,
oh no! So my theory is, or my goal is that as we do these sessions, this can evolve into an app that we collectively make into an app store or Play Store.
Okay, I like this. All right.
So Settl can be a real thing if everyone likes it.
Yeah, Settl could be like, something that we make collectively. That is so awesome. All right, cool.
So this was one of those shitty ideas I had that I never ended up making. So now's the chance.
Now is the chance.
Are we also going to the matchmaking amongst the chat itself?
I don't know. Maybe.
People are. I'm pretty sure a few people hit on Amrita. I'm not sure. I missed a lot of the chat, but then maybe. Sid, did you now ask Jenil to make personal attacks on me? No, Amrita, I did not. I think a lot of people got triggered when Jenil threw your life story. I mean, not yours. I mean, hypothetical life story, of course.
Hypothetical life story. Yeah.
Continue.
Very hypothetical.
Yeah.
So I'm going to write my very original witty bio that I totally didn't copy from a Google search. So I'm just going to say live, love, and laugh because what's more original than live, love, and laugh, right?
Yeah.
So I pressed enter and says, great, let's move on to finding the one in air quotes for you. And we have our profile compiled together. Here's what we have about you so far. It says Jenil, who says live, love, and laugh, and his Instagram ID is this, right? So here are some people looking to settle with a sad smiley face.
Yeah, I know. Bechare.
So
Shivani.
now there's always got to be a Shivani, right? Because everyone has a Shivani in their life.
Oh my
And
god.
maybe I'm generalizing here, but that's just been
Your
my
experience.
opinion. Yeah. So looking for an adventure, which is also a very original
Yeah, very
sentiment
original.
that a lot of people
Type
have.
or
And so unfortunately, I couldn't build a left swipe or a right swipe.
yeah.
So I made our own personal like version of left swipe and right swipe, which is or fine.
All fine.
Because we're looking to settle, right? It's not something fun we're doing. It's something we're doing on a sad, lonely night, or maybe sitting in a bathroom, staring down at the bathroom tiles, right? So I'm gonna just go with. So there's this another
Preeti.
person,
So
right?
again, very original.
Right? Very non-Preeti thing to say if you think about it from a movie context, but whatever. I'm
But it's a
gonna
match made
contradict.
in heaven, man. You say the same
Yeah,
thing.
I mean, what were the odds of that happening, right?
Yeah.
Totally didn't see that coming. So I'm gonna go ahead and contradict myself and type, right? So there's this third one who says this into neuroscience, tech, and comedy, which is perfect.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna,
Type.
please select your match, which is also in airports, because so I'm gonna say fine. And yeah, it says finally you have settled for Priya, who you can find on Insta at not Priya, because this person does not exist. So this was our fun little application. I think what also we could do is, like, when we make this real application, is automatically set like a calendar invite to a date at a place where they sell expensive coffee,
Of course.
because we're all too sad to not go. And yeah, that could be a good application,
Oh
I think.
wow. This is
So
Pranav said this is coding stand up.
Yeah,
I agree.
So this is actually no joke. This is an idea that me and one of my friend Matt had when we were just sitting in my apartment late at night, and we were just talking about how this dating apps, like, you either die as a great software engineer or you end up being the one that ends up making a dating app, right?
Yeah.
That was the running joke. So why not?
Amazing. Okay. So
So
how
now
did you do this?
So let's look at the source code.
Okay.
So in Node.js or JavaScript itself, there's this use strict, which is from a security standpoint, it's great to use that because it prevents certain conditions that would happen that shouldn't happen. I'm not going to go more into that.
Okay.
And also you'll see here, instead of var, I've used let, because for all the nerds out there, there's this thing called variable hoisting, which is a thing that happens with var, which is, so it's generally a good advice to not use var unless you absolutely have to.
Okay.
Right. So again, if you copy and paste this code into your own local machine, it may not work, because this thing called prompt, which is asking you a question, is designed for this ID itself.
Okay.
Prompt is like, so Node has this thing called Node modules, and Node modules has this thing called readline, which is responsible for taking user input and output.
Okay. So this is something that you have made, or is it because
so
you're coding
prompt
here?
I was coding here. So prompt is a function that's made with readline.
Okay.
So we're not going to go deep into that, but it's a function that I'm using that takes user input.
Got it.
Right? And then I can store it into a variable called name.
Got it.
Right? So and this two slash that you see, this is for comments. It's always good practice to have comments in your code, because if you're reading it after, or if someone else reads your code, you can understand the logic of it, and understand what it does, right? So it's like documenting the code itself so that someone can understand better what your thought process is.
Oh, so that is not going to come in the actual final thing, but it's just for people.
It's just for someone who's reading the code.
Okay.
So okay, so let's start with
Yeah.
the name, or whatever you want to call yourself. We're gonna keep it very open-minded. So this is the first question that was asked.
Yeah.
And these are all console.log statements, right?
Yeah,
It's very simple. It's just printing it out. So we have an obligatory welcome statement,
message.
because why not? Everyone does it, so I think we should do. So hi, and instead of a whole string, you will notice that I have the variable name here.
Yeah.
So whatever the person types here, it's going to store it in name, and that's going to be printed out over here.
And this can work in, even if I use this on Chrome. Like this is.
Yeah. I shared the link with you, so you can put it in I think the description, or first of
awesome.
People to explore and play around with it, get as dark as possible.
There are a couple of suggestions on making this entire app as a open source concept, so we can keep on building on top of this every time, and finally we'll have the Settl, the app which the world deserves.
Yeah. So for now, you guys will have to settle for this. Later, we can make this a real thing, and I'll be the first user. So now we can have this welcome message, as you can see, and then I have a empty console.log statement because I want to make it look pretty and leave an empty line. You could also do it with a /n, which is a command for new line.
Okay.
I just wanted to do it this way because it was quicker, and now I'm going to ask for the Instagram, which is also a prompt, which is basically a question asking for a user input.
Right. So now every time it shows Insta, it'll show whatever you're going to type in here.
Right. So it's going to store it in Insta then.
Got it.
Right. So now your very original witty bio, right? So it is also a prompt. It takes in whatever bio you put in, and then it just logs that. Great. Now let's go find the one, right? An empty line to make it look pretty. And then now we'll store the name, bio, and Insta in a my profile, which is an array.
Right, because it's got like those square brackets.
Right. So in this, when designing this, what does the profile contain? Name, bio, and Insta. I didn't put the age purposefully because age is just a number and it does not matter. And that's we're very progressive, so we're gonna keep it that way.
And plus you're settling. देख के क्या करोगे? age से क्या करोगे?
Yeah, exactly.
Initially I thought it was settled down, but now I realize it's just settling for somebody.
Yeah. So again, over here, this is interesting actually. You maybe we didn't touch on this, but I'll go over it quickly. So when you wanna access an element of an array, right? A good way to do it is, or I think the only way to do it here in this case is use the variable, which is my profile, and in that bracket I'll write 0, which is the 0th element.
Right.
Which is name.
Yeah. Oh, this is how you learned that 0 should be put. You can't put 1. You can't start with 1. Yeah.
So who says, and then 1, which is the bio, and 2, which is the Insta. So 0, 1, and 2.
Okay. Got it.
Right? Yeah. So let's move on to the match names, which is also, these are all the potential matches that I hard coded because this is not a peer-to-peer application where people can sign up and communicate with each other. I'm going to self-create this imaginary people, or maybe real people. Yeah. So I just took some generic names and, or not generic, I think they're great names. I don't want to offend anyone. With a bio and their Instagram stored in an array, separated by a comma.
Got it.
And then I made their profiles. 0th element, first element, and second element. So it's easier for me to access a single thing without having to hard code everything.
Okay. So, okay, so now you've put all these three in a line, and supposing, does that also decide the sequence with which those names open?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
actually,
or I mean, it's the way you program it. So you can program it to just randomly spew out any one of them,
Okay.
or you can program it to reverse it, or
Okay.
just, you know,
Okay.
whatever. So it
Got
doesn't
it.
matter.
Right.
so that if you notice 39 has a square bracket, and each line 40, 41, 42 also has a square bracket which opens.
Right.
So
Right? So
2D
that's
array.
yeah, it's an array.
Oh, so the
within
whole thing
array.
array within arrays.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is the inception version. It's called a 2D array,
Okay.
which is an array inside of an array. And there could be, you can go
You
as
can have
deep as,
multiple arrays like that. Okay.
right, right.
Damn, dude. Okay. So Kunal has
So,
asked share this code GitHub.
yeah, I'll put it on GitHub or
Or you can,
wherever it's easy.
yeah.
I think GitHub would be, I don't know if everyone would be on GitHub.
In
I can
fact, I
just,
was thinking, Jenil, maybe this can be an interesting topic for the next set to explain maybe a concept of node and the concept of Git. Git is such
yeah,
a beautiful concept, like GitHub
right.
itself. That itself
Yeah,
will be an amazing, just a topic, to explain about
sure,
how
100%.
data is saved and how code is saved.
Okay.
Yeah,
There are some
cool.
people who are on, I mean, yeah.
Yes,
GitHub.
sure. I mean, you can follow me on GitHub at Jenil04. I'll probably put it there if you
So
wanna.
yeah, share your links. I'll put it in the description after the stream.
Cool.
Yeah. Done. Okay. So now we
Or-
have, yeah, tell me.
Or you can go to jenil.wtf and you'll find everything there. That's my personal space where you can find all the places where I'm available.
Jenil.wtf is a great,
Yeah.
great website.
I actually got a lot of shit for having that domain name because people told me that nobody's gonna hire you. I think the opposite happened because I think a lot of hiring managers are progressive and
Yeah.
the idea of professionalism is very fluid, but whatever. Moving on.
Jenil, you have to hear this one. David has written, Jenil is so single that he made a dating app for himself. That's like the best compliment for a programmer. You didn't give up. Oh, man.
All right then.
Wow.
On that note, we shall move on.
Okay.
Not gonna give any comments to that. So, okay. So we can start with the first function. I
Yeah.
think you touched on that. The idea of a function where the actual matching happens, which is basically you match with everyone that you
Yeah.
say fine on,
Yeah.
right? Because why would you have two persons say yes to each other when you can just settle for everyone? So it's going to match you with everyone. And that's a feature I really wanted to implement because it doesn't matter. So we're going to start with a for loop.
Understood.
And
Okay, 1 second. So you have a for loop and then let I equal 0. So this is the, yeah, you are going to match with everyone. So then one by one, all those things will come up.
right.
So even if you had typed fine for the first one, it would have still showed the other two,
Right.
right?
Because I mean, again, the concept of, exploring everyone,
Sure.
you can like,
Which is the concept of a dating app.
right. So you
Right.
just,
Which
you
is why
go
you'll
and
never settle.
you'll never settle.
That's the irony of
Exactly. There's so much
Damn.
humor I wanted to add there.
Did
It's
we-
actually,
That's the irony of Tinder, right? I mean,
yeah.
yeah. All right. So then,
So
okay, can you change that type or like or fine instead of fine? Like that was sort of bothering me.
yeah, that was a typo.
Done.
frankly.
Okay. Because I was wondering. Then so the for thing is for the whole loop. वो हो गया.
Yeah.
Then
Now inside the for loop,
yeah.
there's this. I wanted to give it a name because you want to have meaningful names. It's
Sure.
a very important thing to assign it to anything because
Okay.
when someone else sees it or even if you see it after a while, they should be meaningful. And I think it's just good practice.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's swipe equals. You're going to prompt and we're going to go into match profiles, which is this array.
Yeah.
And we're going to go to the ith element, which is it's going to start with 0,
0. Yeah.
right? And we're going to go to 0, which is the name.
Okay.
So this is how you access an element inside of an element.
Right.
It's a 2D array, right? Yeah.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Right.
Understood.
So 0 is the name of it. That's why I
Yeah.
hard coded it, because I want to print out the name first. So the name, who says, and the bio over here, which is the first element, which is this one, right? And then there's a piece of text that I'm going to print out, and I'm going to take in an input.
Got it.
Now, if the swipe, which is what we wrote, says fine, then I'm going to print out finally you settled for.
Yeah, you can find out. And
Yeah.
then where is the else?
Oh, well, technically, you don't always need an
You
else.
don't need an else.
Right.
So it's okay here in this case.
Correct.
It would be nice to have an else, but I just don't see a very strong use case.
There has to be a logic for it, right? What do you want to do? Do you want to catch the else, like you want to catch the other case and do something with it? In his case, there was nothing to do. He just wanted to find the condition. He just wanted one condition. There's no other condition he wants to handle.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. All right. I think I get it. I mean, obviously this will, I'll have to go over this video a couple of, or maybe 15 more times, but then at least, so this same thing, the same text would have made zero sense to me before.
Right.
And now at least I'm able to see something. I'm able to make some sense of it. So that's like a win.
But also, if Jenil wouldn't have done it in JavaScript and he would have done it in Java, you would still have been able to understand.
Okay.
Because the concepts of for, if, function are.
What if you would have done it in Python?
The basic concepts are there in all of them.
Okay.
It's the same.
That's is huge then.
Core language, the syntax, what I explained or what Jenil is showing right now, the core syntax is the same.
Right.
Just that the syntax would change slightly based on
the brackets would change, the for, let function, words would have changed.
Exactly.
Okay.
So in this case now, instead of var, we've used let because that's the ideal way it's supposed to be.
Right.
But that could change in every language.
Right. Oh, awesome, man. Okay.
Actually, to all the people who commented on the single thing, this is actually a great conversation starter that we used to use back in the day when we were in college at parties where there was nothing to talk about, and we used to brag about this app and just made it as a joke, but whatever. So I hope you guys understood it. Here we are. One last thing is that we're invoking the function.
Okay. And you're closing it.
Yeah. So this is how you call it. So if I don't have this, then this is not going to run. We have to tell it to run, right? So this is a way to, or what we call it, to invoke the function, which is mean you're calling the function.
Okay.
You're telling it to run.
And okay, so how does it start? Can you just go up? Like the first command that you put up was? Okay, fine.
So also one thing to note here is that JavaScript is single threaded.
What does that mean?
What that means is it's going to go line by line. So let's say something's here that's important, but the thing it's calling is somewhere written over at the bottom. It's not going to know because it hasn't reached that line yet.
Understood.
It's always going to go line by line.
It has to go through the whole code before reaching there.
Right. So if I call my profile and if I tell it to print out my profile, and if I tell it to print out somewhere, let's say line number 8.
Yeah.
It's going to throw an error because it just doesn't know it yet.
Okay. And is this the same in other languages, or are other languages not like this?
Actually, I haven't tried it yet. So
no, I don't know. Can other languages, are there non-threaded languages that can jump random? I mean,
actually the concept of a threading is a requirement. So all the languages would have some way in which you can make it into a, by default, there'll be a single thread. You can make it into multiple threads because you can do things parallelly. Because you would want to do things parallelly, right? You wouldn't want to do one thing at a time.
Exactly.
That's not what you want
Exactly.
to do. So threading is a very beautiful concept, but probably a much longer discussion, but something that we can for.
Cool.
Very, very interesting, in fact, threading, because whether to do serially or parallelly is a whole conversation. Right?
Yeah, because it's again like it's almost like those serial, what do you call it? Electric networks, right? So a serial versus parallel may
Correct.
in physics.
In physics,
So that is very cool because even in the brain, it is actually a lot of series of parallel neural networks that are functioning, and inside each one, it is a serial, like
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
sort of, right? So there, but then at one time there must be like, I don't know, like 10,000 parallel networks happening, but in each of them it is neuron to neuron.
Yeah.
So it's wow. Okay. I didn't make notes because I thought I'll just listen, but I will have to
Yeah.
go over this whole thing again and actually start. Like I will make notes for sure, and let's figure out. So once I go through the whole thing, I'll figure out where, and you guys tell me what should be the next class.
I was going through the chat, a lot of interesting concepts. One interesting thing would be OOPS. A lot of people have been asking about it. OOPS is
Yeah. Wolfrex Gaming has just asked, please explain OOPS concept.
Object-oriented programming is that's the core concept of Java and many such languages.
Okay.
So where
Object-oriented programming.
every entity is an object and not just something. It's defined as an object. We'll come to it. It's a very beautiful concept. It's more of the concept of how to structure these functions. So now in Jenil's example, you saw match, but imagine you have a team of 10,000 people working in a company, and they all are going to write their own functions. So how do you structure the functions in such a way that you can divide across teams, which is a beautiful concept.
Okay.
And how do you structure it so that code is scalable, so that once you write a function, you never have to write it again, so you can make it as a reusable function.
Correct. So if you define objects, then that makes it easy. If you don't define objects, you have to code everything every time.
Correct.
Sort of.
Correct. Something like that. The core concept is of reusability, but different ways to attain reuse.
Okay. All right. We can talk about
that. Is an interesting thing.
Cool. So one thing I really want to know is, how do you learn this? Do you learn language by language, or do you keep learning it like this? Do you keep learning conceptually and sort of figure out all languages and in comparison? Like, do we learn serial or do we learn parallel?
Jenil, you.
So here's the way I see it. The way I learned in the beginning let's start from college is we learned just introduction to what programming was. I think we started with Java, and then we began learning data structures.
Okay.
And then we went on to data structures and algorithms. And then we went on to operating systems, compiler design, and databases. Which also includes a lot of computer architecture and all of that. Okay. So this is like the basic, you're building a foundation. Once you have that foundation and you have built it really strong, which is super hard to do. I think even people who call themselves software engineers, including myself, aren't really great at all of these things. They're so complicated in its own. So once you're really good and feel confident with that foundation that you have of all these subjects, especially data structures and algorithms, you can move on to actually working on stuff. So what I mean by that is, let's say you have an idea, right? Or let's say you want to build a product or a project. Start with a simple one. But this was a simple idea, right? But it was super funny and engaging, right? So start with something, and then once you start to research on it, on how to build it, you'll automatically figure out to, okay, so to do this, I need to learn this. To do this, I need to learn this.
That's probably the best way.
The best way to do it is by working on good projects.
So give me a homework. What would be a good homework for me and the chat?
I think a great homework would be to practice and understand what variables are. So assigning variables, printing stuff, and functions and for loops.
Okay. Cool.
Perfect. Right. Maybe an example of a homework would be something like a calculator. Pick.
Right.
Very simple. That's one of the basic ones you learn in Java or any language. So pick a calculator, write functions for some addition, subtraction, division.
Okay.
And especially pay attention to the division one, because it has a lot of conditions under it.
Okay.
So that would be the very basic one. Write functions for all of them. Try calling those functions, see if it works with all different kinds of input. That would be a brilliant one to start off with, I think.
Okay.
And if you really want to know about loops, you can do factorial, or you can make Fibonacci. So like Fibonacci, you can have a function which does Fibonacci, right?
Wow.
Find the first 10 Fibonacci numbers, have a function which
got it. Yeah.
Also,
even by
So there's this thing called infinite loops, which I think when you're working with loops in the beginning, you may end up with. uh, which can overflow memory, or something that happens is also called stack overflow. If you write infinite loops, and I made that mistake in the beginning, in the first year of my college, I wrote a program in Java where it creates infinite files that said test,
Yeah.
right? And as a prank, we used to send it to friends saying homework one underscore solution, and when they click on it, it runs the program and it makes these infinite files. It's very diabolical, sure, but what ended up happening is that I ran the program by mistake first on my computer, and it just started making infinite number of files, empty files that were called test. So yeah, try to avoid infinite loops. They're not great.
How,
It's not a good
what?
experience.
Okay, all right. And how do I
Um,
know if I've made an infinite loop? My computer will crash.
Yeah, pretty much.
What?
Ideally, if you it wouldn't
What
crash.
the-
A Chrome tab would then not work. So
yeah,
Chrome
so
would
you
then
can
work.
stop it. It's just not pretty.
Damn it!
It
What
depends on
kind?
where you're coding. So if you're writing a code at the core computer OS level, then your computer will get impacted. If
Right.
you're
Yeah.
Okay.
one tab, then just that tab will get impacted,
Yeah,
or your
yeah.
Chrome might
I'll
crash.
see if I can find somebody else's laptop and I'll try.
Yeah.
You have to tweak with the for loop, and if you tweak it enough, you can make an infinite loop.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that sounds like a lot of learning. I mean, if I learn to make an infinite loop, I'll probably learn a lot more about Java.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. All right. Cool. Amazing. All right, guys. That was an awesome lecture. I really enjoyed it. And Jenil, thank you so much. You've put in a lot of effort making that app. I think it's going to happen.
Yeah, let's make it happen. I'd love to know what features you millennials
You
would like to have.
millennials.
I mean, I'm a millennial too, but I have a certain way of looking at things, but
Sure.
some people might have different way of looking at things, and I'd love
Yeah.
to know what they think.
Yeah.
Uh,
This is the opposite of OnePlus.
Yeah.
We should run this on a OnePlus phone. But yeah, amazing. People are asking for an open source platform where you can make this.
So a GitHub would be a great place.
Okay. I
Also,
think you can run it also there and see.
you can run it also there. If you
Yeah.
also have a cool name that's better than that,
Hmm.
tell it to me. We can make this thing happen. Obviously, I don't want to go fast on it because the goal is that we can make it together over a course of streams.
Sure.
So as we learn, we can have an iteration, and
Sure.
eventually, at the end, when we learn to make apps, we can then publish it.
Amazing. Do you want to? How about we make a separate channel on Discord just for Settl, and you guys can talk
Yeah.
it over, and
Sounds interesting.
Sure.
yeah, that'll
Sure.
be amazing. And the rest of us can just watch. Like we won't interrupt you, but then yeah, it'll be super fun to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Let's do that.
Cool.
Amazing.
Done.
Let's see what Chad has been up to. Aruna said that if you want to know coding, learn Computer Evolution first. Watch this movie, Imitation Game. Acha, of course.
It's a great movie. Yeah.
Benedict
Cumberbatch,
Cumberbatch. Yeah.
About Turing.
Let's-
only, I think, yeah.
About Turing. Yeah. Let's make hybrid FE for it with proper BE. Okay, random words. Sure. I have no idea what that means.
What was that? About
Let's make hybrid FE for it with proper BE.
front end and back end.
Oh,
Front end is a UI,
Sure.
back end is a database.
okay,
yeah.
okay.
One thing that I'd like to say there is that my professor also used to tell me is front end and back end are not really good terms. It should
Mhm.
always be called infrastructure and product, because
Ah.
that's a good, meaningful way of signifying it.
Hmm.
I think front end and back end are more like millennial terms like LOL that
Hmm.
people ended up calling it, but on a very core level, it's infrastructure and product.
Yeah. So then you think about it that way. Like
Yeah.
it's like it changes the way you look at it. Yeah, makes sense.
Right.
Okay, guys. Today's problem is that even if I go back on chat,
You gotta read, I know.
I know, like all the languages threading concepts. Yeah, dude. I mean, I'll need another live stream just to decode the chat today.
I think the funniest comment is at the end of this whole thing, Adarsh has written, "Watch Mr. Robot to understand everything." Nice.
All right then. Priya wasn't real. Oh, Pranav is fully triggered. Priya wasn't real. See, those are the only comments I understand. Okay, like
Yeah.
for the command backline, open source, Tinder is just an advertisement for Settl.
Yeah. Yeah.
रसोई में शिवानी थी.
I'm so glad to have this product validation from all these guys on Settl.
Customers agree.
This wasn't a
There
shitty
is a
idea
real
after all.
pain point, man, Jenil.
Yeah. Apparently, so people want you in matchmaking next season.
Yeah, hit me up. I'll build a great algorithm.
Yeah,
that
Seema
matches you with
Tapari
everyone.
wants.
Yeah.
Amazing. All right. What Sid learn in this stream? Learning ABC and what the project is being thought of? Writing a novel. Yeah, I know. Coffee shop will be the sponsor of this app. All right. Guys, this was amazing. Thank you so much. What we are going to do now is we are going to give homework and chat. Everybody has to do this. Not the guys who are asking about 8054 or whatever, but the rest of us normal people who didn't understand any of it. We will all make if else and we will all make loops. And whenever we do this next, probably we'll give it like 7 to 10 days and then we'll do episode 2, right? And then we'll figure out the title, we'll figure out what all we want to talk about. And yeah, I think that's about it. Perfect. Chat, thank you so much. You were exceptionally good today. I'm super proud of you. You guys are amazing. Wolfrax Gaming has asked, please one stream on multi-threading and asynchronous.
Yeah. We discussed that, right? Something
Yeah.
that we have to cover next
Yeah.
time. When Node.js.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Cool. I will share Jenil's GitHub link. I will share Jenil's website link below the description. In the
We're
description.
gonna do the Discord for sure.
We'll do Discord. Couple of things I wanted to say. One is that next week we are starting YouTube memberships. So let's. I'll put up the. So there are 3-4 streams happening this week. So I'll explain everything in the next stream. Next month we are going to start private classes. Probably once a month on Zoom. That will not be on YouTube. Pehle. We will be editing it and putting it up on YouTube much later. But then whoever wants to be a part of that class can let me know. And most importantly, it's my mom-dad's anniversary. So mom-dad, happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Happy
Nathan.
anniversary.
So yes, that's it for today. Guys, thank you so much. We will see you soon. And Nihali, I'm not going to read a poem today. I will. Tomorrow is Thursday, right? So let's read one tomorrow for IG.
Or
Live.
maybe we
Yeah.
can have an AI write a poem.
Oh.
And you can narrate it.
So that guy did it, right? Like GPT-3. They were.
Yeah. Oh, I wrote an article about it, which if you read it, there's a surprise in the end, and I don't want to spoil it for you. But
Okay.
GPT-3 has a lot of capabilities to do much more than just
Awesome.
poems.
We can do a talk on that also. Share that link as well. I'll put that up also.
Done.
Cool.
Awesome. All right, guys, follow Srinath on his Instagram channel. Follow Srinath on his YouTube channel. Both of them are in the description. And Jenil can be reached on jenil.wtf and on
there
his
you can-
Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Amazing, guys. See
you
you.
so much.
Good night. Happy coding.
All right.
I will see you soon. Bye.
Bye, guys.